I need you to be my boyfriend. Right now. Those were the first words a complete stranger ever said to Ethan Cole outside Murray's coffee house on a Tuesday morning that would change everything. A desperate woman with panic in her eyes, reaching for him like he was a lifeline. And in 3 seconds, this single father who'd spent 5 years building walls around his heart said yes to a lie that would unravel both their carefully constructed lives. Because sometimes the truth starts with pretending. Sometimes love begins with fear. And sometimes the person you save ends up saving you back. If you're ready for a story about second chances, broken hearts, and the courage to love again, stay with me until the very end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The morning started the way every morning had started for the past 5 years, with Ethan Cole's daughter, Maya, asking him if her hair looked okay. "Dad, is this braid too messy?" She stood in front of the bathroom mirror, her small hands already attempting to fix what didn't need fixing. Ethan leaned against the doorframe, coffee mug in hand, studying his 8-year-old daughter with the kind of attention most people reserved for solving complex equations. Her dark hair was pulled back in a French braid he'd learned to master through countless YouTube tutorials and more failed attempts than he cared to remember. "It's perfect, sweetheart," he said, and he meant it. Not because the braid was technically flawless. There were a few loose strands near her temple, but because she'd done most of it herself this time, and that mattered more than perfection ever could. Maya turned to face him, her eyes, the same shade of brown as her mother's, searching his face for confirmation. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." She smiled then, that gap-toothed grin that could dissolve any bad mood, any stressful thought, any reminder that life hadn't turned out the way he'd planned. Maya grabbed her backpack from the hook by the door, already mentally 3 steps ahead, the way kids always were. "Can we get hot chocolate after school?" she asked as they headed down the stairs of their 3-bedroom home in the suburbs. It was a nice house. Too nice, some might say, for a man who barely noticed his surroundings anymore. But it had a good school district, and that was all that mattered. "It's Tuesday," Ethan reminded her. "Piano lesson." "After piano?" He pretended to consider it, though they both knew the answer. "After piano." The drive to Riverside Elementary took 12 minutes, a route Ethan could navigate blind. Past the park where they'd scattered Sarah's ashes. Past the grocery store where Maya had thrown a tantrum over cereal when she was 4. Past the life they'd built and the life they were still building, one ordinary morning at a time. When they pulled up to the drop-off lane, Maya unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't immediately bolt like the other kids. She turned to him, serious now. "Dad?" "Yeah, Bug? Are you happy?" The question hit him sideways the way only children's questions could. Direct, unfiltered, impossible to dismiss. Ethan reached over and tucked one of those loose strands behind her ear. "I'm happy when I'm with you." "That's not what I asked." Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. "I'm working on it," he said, which was the most honest answer he could give. Maya studied him for another moment, then nodded like she understood something he didn't. She kissed his cheek, grabbed her backpack, and disappeared into the stream of children flowing toward the school's entrance. Ethan sat there longer than necessary, watching until he couldn't distinguish her purple backpack from all the others. Then he put the car in drive and headed toward the coffee shop where he'd been stopping every Tuesday for the past 3 years. Murray's Coffee House sat on the corner of 5th and Maple, a small brick building with ivy crawling up one side and mismatched furniture that gave it the appearance of someone's living room that had wandered into commercial real estate. Ethan liked it because it was quiet, because the owner, an older man named Don, never tried to make small talk, and because their dark roast was strong enough to taste like a decision. He parked across the street, checking his phone out of habit. 7 emails already, and it wasn't even 8:30. His assistant Jennifer had sent him a reminder about the board meeting Thursday. The acquisition team needed his approval on the Henderson contract. The foundation he'd started in Sarah's name was hosting a gala next month and needed him to review the guest list. Ethan Cole, CEO of Cole Enterprises, one of the fastest-growing tech companies on the West Coast. 34 years old, widowed at 29, raising a daughter alone while running a company with 2,000 employees and a valuation that made investors salivate. None of that mattered at Murray's Coffee House. Here, He was just another guy in jeans and a plain gray t-shirt waiting for caffeine. He pocketed his phone and stepped out of the car, breathing in the October air that smelled like fallen leaves and the particular kind of cold that promised winter wasn't far behind. The coffee shop was just across the street, 30 seconds away. A routine so familiar it required no thought, which was why he didn't see her coming. "Please," a voice said, suddenly close, breathless. "I need you to be my boyfriend." Ethan turned and found himself face to face with a woman he'd never seen before. She was maybe his age, maybe younger. Hard to tell when someone looked that panicked. Her blonde hair was pulled into a ponytail that had seen better days, and she wore a blue jacket over a white dress, professional but rumpled, like she'd been wearing it too long. Her eyes were wide, desperately searching his face. "I'm sorry, what?" Ethan said, certain he'd misheard. "Just for a few minutes. Please. I'll explain, I promise, but he's coming and I can't. I just need—" She glanced over her shoulder and Ethan followed her gaze. A man was walking toward them from the parking lot. Tall, well-dressed in that aggressive way that suggested he cared very much what people thought. Even from a distance, Ethan could see the determination in his stride, the set of his shoulders that spoke of someone used to getting what he wanted. "Please," the woman said again, and this time her voice cracked. Ethan should have walked away, should have apologized, said this was none of his business, continued into Murray's for his coffee and his carefully maintained routine. He had a daughter to think about, a company to run, a life that didn't have room for complications. But there was something in her eyes that stopped him. Not just fear, though that was there, but something deeper, a kind of desperation that came from being cornered, from having no good options, from knowing that sometimes the only choice left was to trust a stranger. He'd seen that look before. In the mirror, in the weeks after Sarah died, when people kept telling him everything would be okay and he'd had to smile and nod and pretend he believed them. "Okay," Ethan heard himself say. "Okay?" She looked at him like she couldn't believe it. "Yeah, okay." The relief that flooded her face was almost painful to witness. "Thank you. God, thank you. Can you just stand close? Act like we're together?" Ethan moved next to her, close enough that it might look natural, and tried to remember the last time he'd stood this close to a woman who wasn't his daughter. Years. It had been years. The man reached them, and up close, Ethan revised his initial assessment. This wasn't just someone well-dressed. This was someone performing wealth, expensive watch, tailored suit, shoes that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. His smile was the kind that didn't reach his eyes. "Lena," the man said, and his voice dripped with familiarity that felt like ownership. "I thought that was you. Ryan." The woman, Lena, somehow made his name sound like an ending. Ryan's eyes flicked to Ethan, assessing, calculating. "I don't think we've met. Ryan Castellane." He extended his hand. Ethan shook it, keeping his grip firm but not aggressive. "Ethan." "Ethan," Ryan repeated like he was filing it away. "How do you and Lena know each other?" This was it. The moment where Ethan could still back out, make an excuse, let this woman handle her own problems. He felt Lena tense beside him, waiting. "We're together," Ethan said simply. The words hung in the air, and he watched Ryan's expression shift. Surprise, then calculation, then something that looked like anger before it smoothed into false congeniality. "Together," Ryan said slowly. "That's wonderful. I didn't know you were seeing anyone, Lena. You didn't mention it when we talked last week." "It's recent," Lena said, and Ethan could hear the effort it took to keep her voice steady. "How recent?" Ethan felt his jaw tighten. He'd been in enough negotiations to recognize a power play when he saw one. Ryan wasn't asking out of friendly curiosity. He was testing, probing for weakness. "Recent enough that it's none of your business," Ethan said, and this time his voice carried an edge, not aggressive, but unmistakably firm. "We actually have plans this morning, so—" "Plans?" Ryan interrupted, his smile sharpening. "Of course. Well, it was good to see you, Lena. We should catch up properly sometime. Without—" He gestured vaguely at Ethan. "Interruptions." Lena's hand found Ethan's arm, her fingers pressing against his sleeve with enough force that he could feel her trembling. "I don't think that's a good idea, Ryan." I wasn't asking permission. Ryan's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something cold underneath. Then it was back, that practiced charm. Anyway, enjoy your plans. He walked away, but slowly, like he wanted them to know he was leaving on his own terms, not because they'd dismissed him. Ethan waited until Ryan disappeared into a black Mercedes before he spoke. Are you okay? Lena let go of his arm like she'd just realized she was holding it. Yes. Thank you. I'm sorry. That was completely insane, what I just did, ambushing you like that. You seemed like you needed help. I did. I do. She pressed her hands to her face, breathing out slowly. God, I can't believe that just happened. Any of it. Do you want to sit down? Ethan gestured toward the coffee shop. You look like you could use some coffee. I look that bad? You look like someone who just had to convince their ex they're dating a stranger. A laugh escaped her, sharp and surprised. That's exactly what I look like. They went inside Murray's and Don glanced up from behind the counter with his usual expression of mild disinterest. If he noticed Ethan had walked in with a visibly shaken woman instead of alone, he gave no indication. The usual? Don asked Ethan. Yeah, and whatever she wants. Lena ordered a latte, and they took a table by the window. Not Ethan's usual spot, but his usual spot was a single chair in the corner, and that seemed inappropriate now. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything. I asked you to lie to a stranger for me. I definitely owe you something. She took a sip of her latte, gathering herself. Ryan and I dated for 3 years. He proposed last Christmas. I said yes. Ethan waited, sensing there was more. And then I found out he'd been sleeping with his assistant for the last 8 months of our relationship. Her voice was matter-of-fact, but her hands tightened around the cup. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He just explained it. Like it made sense. Like I should understand that she didn't mean anything. That it was just physical. That what we had was different. Jesus. The worst part wasn't the cheating, Lena continued, staring into her coffee. It was how small he made me feel. Like I was being unreasonable for being upset. Like my feelings were an inconvenience he had to manage. Ethan knew that feeling. Different context, but the same essential experience of being made to feel like your pain was a burden. I broke off the engagement 6 months ago, Lena said. And he won't. He won't accept it. He keeps showing up, calling, texting, saying he's changed, that he made a mistake, that we're meant to be together. She looked up at Ethan. That's why I panicked when I saw him. I've been avoiding this coffee shop for 2 weeks because I thought I saw his car here, and then today I thought I was safe. And there he was, and I couldn't do it alone again. I couldn't stand there and listen to him tell me what I should feel. So you grabbed the first person you saw. The first person who looked kind, she corrected. You have kind eyes. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He'd been called a lot of things in his life, driven, successful, intimidating, distant, but kind wasn't usually on the list. Well, he said finally, I'm glad I could help. You did more than help. You were... She searched for the word. Believable. The way you stood next to me, the way you talked to him. Ryan actually believed it. I could tell. I spent 5 years married to someone I loved, Ethan said. I remember what it looks like. The past tense registered and Lena's expression softened. I'm sorry. It's okay. It was a long time ago. Grief doesn't care about time. She was right about that. They sat in silence for a moment, drinking their coffee, watching people pass by the window. It should have been awkward, 2 strangers thrown together by desperation and improvisation, but somehow it wasn't. Maybe because they'd already been through something together. Maybe because sometimes it was easier to be honest with someone who didn't know your history. I should let you get on with your day, Lena said eventually. I'm sure you have places to be. Ethan thought about the emails waiting on his phone, the meetings, the decisions that needed to be made. His entire life was places to be. I have some time, he said. Lena looked at him, surprised. Really? Really? Why? Good question. Why was he sitting here with a woman he didn't know, offering time he didn't have, getting involved in a situation that was absolutely none of his business? Because Maya had asked him if he was happy this morning, and he hadn't been able to say yes, because this woman had looked at him with desperate eyes and called them kind. Because for the first time in 5 years, he'd done something that wasn't part of the routine, and it felt like remembering how to breathe. Because you look like you could use someone to talk to, Ethan said, and I'm a pretty good listener. Are you always this nice to strangers? No, he admitted, but I'm making an exception. Lena smiled then, the first real smile he'd seen from her, and it transformed her face completely. Okay, but fair warning, I'm a terrible conversationalist when I'm stressed. I ramble. Ramble away. And she did. She told him about her job as a graphic designer, about the project she was working on for a children's book that she was excited about but terrified she'd mess up. She told him about her apartment that was too small and too expensive but had a view of the park. She told him about her sister who lived in Seattle and called every Sunday to check in, which was sweet but also exhausting because her sister was one of those people who had her entire life figured out. Ethan listened, asking questions when appropriate, laughing at the funny parts, and realizing that he'd forgotten what this felt like. Just sitting with someone, talking, existing outside the narrow channels of his life. What about you? Lena asked eventually. What do you do? It was an innocent question, the kind people asked each other all the time. But for Ethan, it was loaded, because what he did defined how people saw him, how they treated him, what they expected from him. I work in tech, he said, which was true but incomplete. Doing what? Management mostly, a lot of meetings. Also true, also incomplete. Lena nodded, accepting this, not pushing for details the way most people did. Sounds boring. It can be. But you're good at it? I'm adequate, she laughed. That's the most modest thing I've ever heard someone in tech say. They talked for another hour, their coffee cups long empty, and Ethan found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. Lena was funny, self-deprecating, honest in that way people were when they'd already been knocked down and decided being vulnerable was less exhausting than pretending. Eventually, though, reality intruded. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Board meeting moved to 2 p.m. Need you to review slides. I should go, he said reluctantly. Me too. I have a client call at 11. Lena stood, gathering her things. Thank you again for everything. You really saved me today. Happy to help. They walked outside together, and the October air felt colder now, or maybe Ethan had just gotten too comfortable inside. So, Lena said, and there was something tentative in her voice. This might be crazy, but could I give you my number, just in case Ryan shows up again and I need a fake boyfriend on short notice? Ethan should have said no, should have wished her well and walked away and returned to his carefully controlled life. Getting involved with someone else's problems, someone else's drama, that wasn't smart, that wasn't safe. But Maya's question echoed in his head. Are you happy? And Lena was looking at him with hope in her eyes, like maybe he was the kind of person who said yes to crazy things. Sure, Ethan said, pulling out his phone. They exchanged numbers, and Lena smiled that transformative smile again. I promise I won't abuse this, only for emergencies. Define emergency. Ryan shaped emergencies. Fair enough. She turned to go, then paused. Hey, Ethan? Yeah? You were right earlier. You're a good listener. She left before he could respond, walking toward a blue Honda parked down the street. Ethan watched her go, then looked down at his phone where her name glowed on the screen. Lena Moore. He'd planned to get coffee and go to work. Instead, he'd helped a stranger, lied to her ex-boyfriend, and sat in a coffee shop for an hour talking about everything and nothing. It was the most impulsive thing he'd done in 5 years. As he got into his car, Ethan caught himself smiling and realized with some surprise that Maya might get a different answer to her question tonight. He drove toward his office, a glass building downtown that overlooked the bay, and tried to focus on the day ahead. But his mind kept drifting back to Murray's coffee house, to kind eyes and desperate requests, to the strange comfort of talking to someone who didn't know him as anything other than a guy in jeans and a gray t-shirt. The acquisition meeting went fine. The board presentation was approved with minor revisions. Jennifer reminded him about the gala, about a conference call with investors, about 18 other things that required his attention. Ethan handled it all with his usual efficiency, making decisions, solving problems, being the version of himself that everyone expected. But when he picked Maya up from piano at 6 and she asked about his day, he told her something different than usual. "I met someone interesting," he said. Maya's eyes lit up. "Like a friend? Maybe. I don't know yet. What's her name? How do you know it's a her?" "Dad?" She gave him a look that said she was 8, not stupid. "What's her name?" "Lena. Is she nice?" Ethan thought about Lena's honesty, her vulnerability, the way she'd trusted him with her fear. "Yeah, she's nice. Are you going to see her again?" "I don't know, Bug. Maybe." Maya nodded, satisfied with this answer. Then, as Ethan started the car, she said something that stopped him cold. "I think Mom would want you to be happy, Dad. Not just when you're with me." Ethan looked at his daughter, this wise, fierce, impossibly perceptive little person, and felt his throat tighten. Where did that come from? "I've been thinking about it," Maya shrugged. "You work really hard, and you're a good dad, but sometimes you look sad when you think I'm not watching." "Maya, it's okay to be sad," she interrupted, "but it's also okay to be not sad. You know?" He did know. God help him, he knew exactly what she meant. "When did you get so smart?" he asked. "I've always been smart. You just notice sometimes." They went for hot chocolate even though it wasn't on the schedule, and Maya talked about her day, about the mean girl in her class who'd apologized, about the math test she'd aced. Normal things. Good things. But Ethan's phone sat in his pocket, heavy with possibility, with a contact named Lena Moore, and the strange sense that something had shifted. That night, after Maya was in bed, after the dishes were done and the house was quiet, Ethan sat in his living room with a glass of whiskey he didn't really want and thought about the morning. He thought about Lena's face when Ryan appeared. The panic, yes, but also the resignation, like she'd been through this before, like she was tired of fighting. He thought about standing next to her, saying, "We're together," with a conviction that surprised him. He thought about her calling his eyes kind. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, except it wasn't unknown anymore. "Thank you again for today. I know I already said it, but I can't say it enough. You were a lifesaver." Ethan stared at the message for a long moment, then typed, "Happy to help. How are you doing?" The response came quickly. "Better, still processing." "Ryan texted me 3 times since this morning. What did he say?" "The usual. He misses me. He wants to talk. He's concerned about me dating someone new so quickly." A pause, then, "I didn't respond." "Good." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why did you help me?" "You didn't know me. You had no reason to get involved." Ethan thought about his answer carefully. He could say something vague, something easy. Instead, he wrote the truth. "Because you looked scared, and I remember what that feels like. And because sometimes helping someone else is easier than helping yourself." The response took a while. "That's the saddest and kindest thing anyone said to me in months. I'm full of sad, kind things. I'm starting to notice." They texted back and forth for another hour, and Ethan realized he was enjoying himself. Not the surface-level enjoyment of distraction, but genuine pleasure in the conversation, in the connection. When they finally said goodnight, he sat in the dark living room for a while longer, thinking. For 5 years, he'd built a life around control, routine, predictability. Wake up, take care of Maya, go to work, solve problems, come home, repeat. It was safe. It was manageable. It was slowly suffocating him. And then a stranger had run up to him outside a coffee shop and asked him to be her boyfriend. And for reasons he still didn't fully understand, he'd said yes. Now he was texting her at 10:30 at night, smiling at his phone like a teenager, feeling something he'd thought was dead. It was terrifying. It was also, maybe, wonderful. Ethan finished his whiskey, checked on Maya one more time. She was sprawled across her bed in that boneless way kids slept, and went to his own room. Before he turned off the light, he looked at Lena's contact in his phone one more time. He didn't know what this was or what it would become. He didn't know if seeing her again was smart or reckless or somewhere in between, but Maya had asked if he was happy, and for the first time in a long time, he thought maybe he could work his way toward yes. And that had to count for something. The texts didn't stop after that first night. They started casual. Lena sending him a photo of a terrible latte some hipster cafe had served her. Ethan responding with a picture of Maya's latest art project that looked like either a dinosaur or a very angry flower. Small things. Safe things. The kind of messages you exchanged with someone you were getting to know without the pressure of what it might mean. But then they got deeper. 3 days after the coffee shop incident, Lena texted him at midnight. Do you ever feel like you're living someone else's life? Like you made decisions years ago that locked you into being a person you're not sure you actually are? Ethan had been reviewing quarterly reports when the message came through, numbers blurring together on his laptop screen. He stared at her words for a long moment before responding, every single day. What do you do about it? I don't know yet. Still figuring it out. Let me know when you do. I could use the manual. They fell into a rhythm after that, texting throughout the day, her sharing frustrations about demanding clients, him venting about corporate politics in vague enough terms that she wouldn't guess the scale of what he was dealing with. She made him laugh with her observations about the absurdity of modern life. He found himself looking forward to her messages, checking his phone more than he had in years. A week after they met, she texted, Ryan drove by my apartment last night, just sat there in his car for 20 minutes. Ethan's jaw tightened. Did you call the police? And say what? He's not doing anything illegal, just being creepy. That's harassment. It's complicated. It shouldn't be. There was a long pause before her next message. Can I call you? I know it's late. Hi, Lena's voice came through soft and tired when he answered. Hi yourself, you okay? I don't know. He heard her moving around, maybe pacing. I keep telling myself I'm being paranoid, that he's not actually dangerous, just persistent. But then he does things like this and I remember why I'm scared of him. Scared how? Ethan kept his voice gentle, but his mind was already cataloging options, resources, things he could do to help. Not physically. Ryan would never hit me. But he's controlling. He needs to win. And right now I'm something he thinks he lost, so he's trying to get me back like I'm a business deal that fell through. You're not a deal. I know that. You know that. Ryan doesn't know that. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sometimes I think the only reason he wants me back is because I was the one who ended it. If he'd been the one to walk away, he wouldn't have looked back once. Ethan understood that kind of ego. He'd dealt with enough venture capitalists and corporate raiders to recognize the type, men who measured their worth by what they could acquire and control. Have you thought about a restraining order? He asked. On what grounds? That my ex-boyfriend drove by my apartment and sent me text messages? Lena sighed. I looked into it. Unless he threatens me or shows a pattern of stalking behavior, there's not much I can do. And honestly, part of me thinks that would just make it worse. Ryan doesn't respond well to being told no. What does he respond to? I don't know anymore. I thought leaving him would be enough. I thought he'd move on, find someone else to fix, someone else to mold into what he wanted. A pause. That fake boyfriend thing really seemed to bother him, though. Ethan could hear the wheels turning in her head, the same calculation he made 100 times a day in business. What assets do I have, and how do I leverage them? Lena, I know what you're going to say, that lying isn't the answer, that I should just be firm and consistent and eventually he'll give up. Actually, I was going to say that if you need me to be your fake boyfriend again, I'm available. Silence on the other end. Then quietly, you don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I'm offering. Why? Because it worked last time. Because you need help. Because... He stopped. Not sure how to finish that sentence. Because thinking about her dealing with this alone made him angry in a way he hadn't felt in years. Because her voice had become something he looked forward to hearing. Because helping her felt like the first useful thing he'd done outside of work and parenting in half a decade. Because you're nice, Lena finished for him. Those kind eyes I mentioned. Something like that. Ethan, you've already done more than anyone could reasonably expect. You don't owe me. Stop, he interrupted gently. Stop calculating what you owe people and what they owe you. Sometimes people just help each other. No ledger required. He heard her breath catch. I'm not used to that. I'm getting that impression. Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. What if I took you up on it? Not just once, but what if we actually pretended? Just until he backs off. Just until he believes I've moved on. Ethan should have said no. This was getting complicated, crossing lines that were there for good reasons. He barely knew this woman. He had a daughter to think about, a company to run, a life that didn't have room for elaborate deceptions. But he thought about Lena's face outside the coffee shop, the relief when he'd agreed to help. He thought about Ryan sitting outside her apartment, a reminder that leaving sometimes wasn't enough, that some people didn't respect boundaries. He thought about Maya asking if he was happy, and how the past week of talking to Lena had felt like waking up from a long sleep. Okay, he said. Okay? She sounded shocked. Just like that? Just like that. You're either the nicest person I've ever met or you're completely insane. Can it be both? She laughed, and this time it was real. I don't even know what this would look like. Do we have rules, parameters? Probably should, Ethan admitted. He walked over to his home office window, looking out at the city lights. What did you have in mind? I don't know. Nothing physical? Obviously, we're not actually dating. Right. But we should probably be seen together, in public, so it looks real if Ryan's watching. Makes sense. And we should probably know basic things about each other, the kind of stuff couples know, so we don't get caught in a lie. Ethan grabbed a notepad from his desk, already thinking like he was planning a campaign. Okay, let's start with the basics. Favorite color? Green. You? Blue. Birthday? March 15th. You? June 3rd. Coffee order? Latte, extra foam, vanilla, if I'm feeling fancy. You? Black coffee, dark roast, no sugar. That's very on brand for you, Lena said. What's that supposed to mean? Straightforward, no frills, a little bit serious. I'm not serious. Ethan, you make lists for fake dating. You're definitely serious. He smiled despite himself. Favorite food? They went through the questions, favorite movies, pet peeves, childhood stories, surface-level facts that felt strangely intimate when you were sharing them with purpose. Ethan told her about Maya's obsession with pandas. Lena told him about the time she'd accidentally dyed her hair green in college, small pieces of themselves, carefully arranged. Can I ask you something real? Lena said after they'd exhausted the basics. Sure. Your wife, you said it was a long time ago, but are you okay with this? I don't want to... It's fine, Ethan said, and was surprised to find he meant it. Sarah died 5 years ago. Cancer. It was fast, 6 months from diagnosis to the end. And yeah, it still hurts, probably always will. But I'm not betraying her memory by helping you. She would have liked you, actually. She had a thing about helping people who needed it. She sounds wonderful. She was. Ethan sat down in his desk chair, the leather creaking. She would have hated that I turned into this person after she died. All work, all routine. She used to say I needed to live bigger, take more risks. And here you are, agreeing to be a fake boyfriend to a woman you met a week ago. Here I am. She'd be proud, Lena said softly. Maybe. Or she'd think I'd lost my mind. Those aren't mutually exclusive. They made plans to meet for lunch the next day, somewhere visible, somewhere Ryan might see if he was watching. Ethan suggested a restaurant downtown, upscale enough to look like a date, but casual enough not to feel staged. After they hung up, he sat in his office for a while thinking about what he'd just agreed to. A fake relationship. Pretending to be someone's boyfriend to ward off an ex. It sounded like the plot of a bad romantic comedy, the kind Sarah used to make him watch while she made fun of all the implausible scenarios. And yet here he was, living one. His phone buzzed with a message from Jennifer. FYI, the Wall Street Journal wants to do a profile on you. They're calling you one of tech's most eligible bachelors. I told them you'd get back to them. Ethan stared at the message, then at Lena's contact in his phone, and laughed at the absurdity of it all. Tech's most eligible bachelor, agreeing to a fake relationship to help a woman he'd met outside a coffee shop. Sarah would have definitely thought he'd lost his mind, but she also would have been laughing. The restaurant Ethan chose was called Maria, an Italian place with floor-to-ceiling windows and white tablecloths and the kind of quiet elegance that made people lower their voices automatically. He arrived first because he was always early and sat at a table with a view of the street. Lena arrived exactly on time, and Ethan felt something shift in his chest when he saw her. She'd dressed up, a green dress that brought out her eyes, her hair down instead of in the practical ponytail she'd worn at the coffee shop. She looked beautiful, and he felt guilty for noticing. This is pretend, he reminded himself. This is helping a friend. Hi, she said, sliding into the chair across from him. Hi, you look nice. Thanks. I figured if we're doing this, we should look the part. She glanced around the restaurant. This place is gorgeous. How did you find it? I know the owner. Which was true. Marco had approached him about investing in a second location last year, and Ethan had declined, but they'd stayed in touch. They ordered, she got the lobster ravioli, he got the risotto, and settled into conversation that felt easier than it should have between two people who were essentially strangers playing dress-up. So, Lena said, twirling her wine glass, if Ryan asks, how did we meet? We already told him we met at the coffee shop. But what's the story? The romantic version. Couples always have a story. Ethan considered this. You spilled coffee on me. I did not. Fake spilled. You were distracted, not paying attention, crashed right into me. Got coffee all over my shirt. You were mortified. I thought it was funny. And then what? Then we got talking. You insisted on buying me a replacement coffee to apologize. We sat down, started talking, lost track of time. Lena smiled. That's actually pretty good. Very meet cute. I have my moments. Clearly. She took a sip of wine. Okay, next question. Pet names. Do we do those? Ethan made a face. Do we have to? Couples usually have them, even if it's just each other's names said in a specific way. What if I just call you Lena? Boring, but acceptable. She studied him. You seem like you'd be a sweetheart guy. Absolutely not. Honey? No. Babe? I'd rather die. She laughed. You're making this very difficult. I like your name. I'll use your name. Fine, but if Ryan hears that and thinks it's weird, then we'll say I'm old-fashioned. The food came, and they ate while continuing their planning. What they'd tell people about how serious they were, where they'd say they'd been on dates, the level of physical affection that would look natural without crossing lines. Holding hands, Lena said, checking items off on her fingers. That's safe. Arms around shoulders or waist in public. Maybe a kiss on the cheek if the moment calls for it. Sounds reasonable? The key is to look comfortable with each other, natural, like we do this all the time. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand, not thinking about it, just doing it. Her fingers were cold from holding the wine glass. She startled slightly, then relaxed. Like this? He said. Yeah, like that. She looked down at their joined hands. This is weird, right? That this doesn't feel weird? Completely weird. But also kind of nice? Also kind of nice, he agreed. They sat like that for a moment, and Ethan tried to remember the last time he'd held someone's hand across a dinner table. Years. Another lifetime. A version of himself he could barely recognize anymore. Can I ask you something? Lena said. Sure. What do you get out of this? I mean, I know what I get. Protection from Ryan, the appearance of having moved on, but what about you? Ethan considered the question carefully. He could say something easy, something surface level. Instead, he went with honesty. My daughter asked me if I was happy, he said, and I couldn't say yes. I've spent 5 years putting one foot in front of the other, taking care of her, building my career, making sure all the pieces of my life stayed in the right places. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what it felt like to do something just because I wanted to. And you want this? I want to help you. And yeah, maybe I also want to remember what it's like to have someone to talk to look forward to seeing, even if it's not real. Lena squeezed his hand. It's real enough. They finished dinner, and Ethan paid despite her protests. As they walked outside, the October evening had turned cold, and Lena shivered in her dress. "Here," Ethan said, shrugging off his jacket. "I'm fine. You're shivering. Take the jacket." She did, wrapping it around her shoulders, and smiled up at him. "Very boyfriend of you." "I'm a quick study." They stood on the sidewalk, and Ethan became aware of how this must look. The two of them standing close, his jacket on her shoulders, the soft glow of the restaurant behind them. If Ryan was watching, this would definitely sell the story. "Walk me to my car?" Lena asked. "Of course." Her car was parked 2 blocks away, and they walked slowly, not in a hurry to end the evening. She told him about a new project she'd landed, designing a logo for a nonprofit. He told her about Maya's upcoming school play, where she'd been cast as a singing mushroom. "A mushroom," Lena repeated. "That sings." "Don't ask me to explain the plot. I've read the script 3 times, and I still don't understand it." "That's elementary school theater for you." When they reached her Honda, Lena turned to face him, still wearing his jacket. "Thank you for tonight, for doing this, for being kind," he supplied. "I was going to say amazing, but kind works too." She stepped closer and hugged him, quick and warm, and Ethan found himself hugging back, breathing in the scent of her perfume, feeling the weight of another person in his arms. For the first time in so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like. When she pulled back, she was smiling. "Same time next week?" "I'll text you." He watched her drive away, then started walking back to his own car, hands in his pockets now that she'd taken his jacket. His phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "Forgot to give you your jacket back. I'll bring it next time. It's very warm, by the way." He smiled and typed, "Keep it. Looks better on you anyway. Careful, Mr. Cole. People might think you're actually a romantic. God forbid. See you soon, fake boyfriend. See you soon." Ethan drove home with the radio off, his mind replaying the evening. Dinner, conversation, the feel of her hand in his, her arms around him in that brief hug. It had been pretend, all of it carefully orchestrated for the benefit of an audience that might not have even been watching. So why did it feel so real? When he got home, Maya was already asleep, and the babysitter reported a quiet evening of homework and ice cream. Ethan paid her, then went upstairs to check on his daughter. She was sprawled across her bed in flannel pajamas covered in pandas, her mouth slightly open, completely at peace. He adjusted her blanket, kissed her forehead, and stood there for a moment just watching her breathe. This was real. This was what mattered. Maya, safe and happy and loved. Everything else, the company, the money, the carefully maintained image, that was all just scaffolding around the only thing that truly counted. But maybe, he thought as he walked to his own room, maybe there was space for something else too. Not instead of Maya, never instead of her, but alongside. A part of his life that wasn't about duty or responsibility or keeping all the pieces together. Maybe there was room for Lena, even if it was just pretend. He fell asleep thinking about green eyes and borrowed jackets and the way her hand had felt in his. And for the first time in years, he didn't dream about Sarah dying. He dreamed about living. The next 3 weeks fell into a pattern. They'd meet for lunch twice a week, always somewhere visible, somewhere Ryan might see. They'd go for walks in the park, grab coffee, sit on benches and talk about everything and nothing. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple in the early stages of falling in love, tentative, excited, discovering each other. And the strange thing was, in some ways, they were. Ethan learned that Lena had wanted to be an artist, but her parents had convinced her to pursue something more practical, so she'd ended up in graphic design, close enough to art to feel like a compromise, far enough to feel like a betrayal. She learned that he played piano badly, but loved it anyway, that he couldn't cook anything except pasta and grilled cheese, that he sometimes woke up at 3 in the morning panicking about whether he was doing enough for Maya. They texted constantly, good morning messages, midday check-ins, late-night conversations when neither could sleep. The kind of constant contact that would have felt suffocating with someone else, but with Lena just felt natural. And through it all, no sign of Ryan. "Maybe it worked," Lena said one afternoon as they sat in the park watching Maya play on the swings. She'd asked to meet his daughter, and Ethan had surprised himself by saying yes. Maybe he finally got the message. Maybe, Ethan said, but he wasn't convinced. Men like Ryan didn't give up that easily. Maya's wonderful, by the way, Lena added, watching his daughter attempt to swing high enough to touch the sky. She has your smile. She has her mother's everything, Ethan corrected. I'm just the vessel that feeds her and enforces bedtime. You're more than that. She adores you, I can tell. How? The way she looks at you when she thinks you're not watching, like you're her whole world. Ethan felt his throat tighten. I'm trying. Some days I have no idea what I'm doing. That's just called being a parent. Maya ran over then, breathless and grinning. Lena, did you see how high I went? I did. You were practically flying. I was pretending to be a bird, a really fast bird. She looked between them. Are you Dad's girlfriend? Lena glanced at Ethan, and he could see the question in her eyes. What do we say? We're friends, Ethan said carefully. Good friends. Maya considered this with 8-year-old wisdom. Mom used to say her best friend was her favorite person. So if Lena's your good friend, does that make her one of your favorite people? Out of the mouths of babes. Yeah, Bug. I guess it does. Maya nodded, satisfied, and ran back to the swings. That was smooth, Lena said quietly. I panicked. You did well, and for what it's worth, she bumped her shoulder against his. You're one of my favorite people, too. Later that night, after Maya was in bed, Ethan sat in his office responding to emails and trying not to think about how easily Lena had fit into his afternoon, into his life, into the space beside him on that park bench. His phone rang. Unknown number. Hello, Mr. Cole. The voice was smooth, confident, familiar from that day outside the coffee shop. This is Ryan Castellane. I hope you don't mind. I got your number from a mutual friend. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. What can I do for you, Ryan? I wanted to talk to you man to man about Lena. I'm not sure there's anything to discuss. I think there is. Ryan's voice hardened slightly. See, I've been doing some research, and it's funny. Ethan Cole is a pretty common name, but Ethan Cole who has a daughter named Maya, that narrows it down significantly. Ethan's blood ran cold. You're the CEO of Cole Enterprises, Ryan continued. Worth what, $3 billion? 4? Must be nice having that kind of money to throw around. Makes it easy to impress someone like Lena. This conversation is over. Is she after your money? Or did you decide to play hero and rescue the poor damsel in distress? Either way, I thought you should know. Lena has a habit of playing victim. It's what she does. Makes people feel sorry for her so they'll give her what she wants. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? Ryan laughed. How long have you known her? A month? I was with her for 3 years. I know exactly who she is, and I'm trying to save you from making a very expensive mistake. By stalking her? Sitting outside her apartment? Harassing her? I don't know what lies she's told you, but I've never done anything of the sort. I've been worried about her, checking in, trying to make sure she's okay. If that's harassment, then sure, I'm guilty. Ethan wanted to reach through the phone and he took a breath. Getting angry was what Ryan wanted. Showing weakness, showing that he cared enough to be threatened. Thank you for your concern, Ethan said, his voice ice. But I can make my own decisions about who I spend time with. And Ryan, don't call this number again. Don't contact Lena. Don't drive by her apartment. If I hear that you've done any of those things, we'll be having a very different conversation. One that involves lawyers. Do we understand each other? Silence on the other end. Then, you're making a mistake. That's my mistake to make. He hung up, his hand shaking with adrenaline and rage. Ryan knew who he was, had done research, found out about Maya, about his money, about everything he'd been trying to keep separate from this. And now it was all tangled together. He called Lena immediately. Hey, she answered, sounding happy. I was just thinking about you. Ryan called me. The happiness evaporated. What? Ethan told her everything. The research, the accusations, the thinly veiled threats. When he finished, there was a long silence. I'm sorry, Lena finally said, and her voice was thick with tears. God, Ethan, I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to affect you and Maya. I never meant... Stop. This isn't your fault. It is, though. I dragged you into this. I asked you to lie for me, and now he's coming after you. And Lana. He used his CEO voice, the one that made boardrooms go quiet. Listen to me. Ryan is doing exactly what abusive people do when they lose control. He's trying to isolate you, to make you feel like you're the problem, to convince everyone around you that you're the one who can't be trusted. It's manipulation, and it's not going to work. He knows about your daughter. I know. Aren't you scared? He could what? I have resources Ryan can only dream about. Security, lawyers, a PR team that could bury him in negative press before he finished his morning coffee. Ethan's voice softened. I'm not scared of him, Lena. I'm angry that he's making you scared. He heard her crying now, quiet sobs she was trying to muffle. I don't know what to do, she whispered. You keep living your life. You stop letting him take up space in your head, and you let me worry about the rest. You've already done so much. Then let me do a little more. They talked for another hour, Ethan reassuring her, making plans, promising that this wouldn't end with Ryan winning. When they finally hung up, he sat in the darkness of his office and thought about the man who'd called him, who'd threatened him in that careful way that left no evidence. Ryan Castellane had made a critical mistake. He'd assumed that Ethan was like him, someone who could be intimidated, someone who would back down when pushed. He had no idea who he was dealing with. Ethan picked up his phone and called his head of security. Marcus, I need you to look into someone for me, Ryan Castellane. I want to know everything, where he works, where he lives, who he associates with. And I want to know if he's been following someone, if he has a pattern of this behavior. How deep do you want me to go? As deep as it takes. And Marcus, I want this quiet. No trails back to me. Understood. The next morning, Ethan dropped Maya off at school and drove straight to Lena's apartment. She answered the door looking exhausted, like she hadn't slept. You didn't have to come, she said. I wanted to. She let him in, and he took in the space, small, like she'd said, but warm. Art on the walls, plants on the windowsill, the kind of organized chaos that spoke of someone who actually lived in their home instead of just existing in it. Coffee? She offered. Please. They sat on her couch with their mugs, and Ethan noticed she was still wearing his jacket, like armor. I have people looking into Ryan, he said. If there's a pattern, if he's done this before, we'll find it. And if he steps out of line again, we'll be ready. You really don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. He set down his coffee and took her hand. Lena, listen to me. What started as fake, it's not anymore. Not for me. I care about you. I care about what happens to you, and I'm not going to stand by and let someone make you feel unsafe. Her eyes filled with tears. When did this become real? I don't know. Somewhere between the fake dates and the real conversations. Somewhere between pretending and actually feeling. Ethan, you don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know that I'm not doing this out of obligation. I'm doing it because you matter to me. She kissed him then, soft and quick, like she couldn't help herself. When she pulled back, they both looked shocked. Sorry, she said. That wasn't... We said no. It's okay. Is it? Ethan thought about all the reasons this was complicated. He thought about Ryan, about the lies they'd told, about Maya and his company, and all the ways this could go wrong. Then he thought about how Lena's hand felt in his, how her smile made him feel like the world was less heavy, how for the first time in 5 years he woke up looking forward to the day instead of just getting through it. Yeah, he said. It's okay. She kissed him again, longer this time, and Ethan let himself fall into it, into her, into the terrifying possibility that maybe happiness wasn't something he'd lost forever. Maybe it was something he could choose again. They stayed on her couch for a long time after that kiss, not talking, just existing in the same space while the morning light shifted across her living room floor. Ethan's mind was racing, trying to catalog what had just happened, what it meant, how it changed everything and nothing all at once. I should probably freak out right now, Lena said eventually, her head resting against his shoulder. This was supposed to be fake. We had rules. Rules are overrated, says the man who makes lists for everything. I'm learning to be spontaneous. She laughed softly. How's that working out for you? Terrifying, but also He searched for the right word. Right. It feels right. Lena lifted her head to look at him. What do we do now? I mean, with Ryan still out there, with all the pretending we've been doing, do we tell people it's real? Do we keep up the charade? I don't know. What do you want? I want Ryan to disappear. I want to not be scared anymore. I want... She stopped, biting her lip. What? I want this to be simple. Just two people who like each other, figuring things out. No ex-boyfriends, no lies, no complications. Ethan cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. I can't promise simple. I have a daughter, a company that requires most of my time, a life that's anything but uncomplicated. But I can promise honest. I can promise that whatever this is, we do it with our eyes open. I don't even know who you really are, Lena whispered. I know you're a CEO. I know you have money, but I don't know what that means, what your life actually looks like. Do you want to? She nodded. Okay. Ethan stood, holding out his hand. Come with me. They drove in his car, not the modest sedan he used for dropping Maya at school, but the Tesla he kept in his garage for business meetings. Lena was quiet as they left her neighborhood, watching the city change through the window as they headed toward the bay. Cole Enterprises occupied 15 floors of a glass tower that reflected the water like a mirror. Ethan pulled into the executive parking garage, and Lena stared up at the building with something like disbelief. This is yours? I own 40%. Investors own the rest. But yeah, I built it. He turned off the engine. Come on, I'll give you the tour. The elevator required a key card to access the executive floors. As they rose, Ethan watched Lena's reflection in the polished doors, saw her processing this new information, recalibrating who she thought he was. The doors opened directly into his floor, and Jennifer looked up from her desk with surprise. Mr. Cole? I wasn't expecting you until this afternoon. I know. I'm just showing someone around. He gestured to Lena. Jennifer, this is Lena Moore. Lena, my assistant Jennifer, who actually runs this company while I take the credit. Jennifer smiled, but Ethan could see her curiosity. In 5 years, he'd never brought anyone to the office who wasn't business-related. Nice to meet you, Ms. Moore. Just Lena, please. Can you hold my calls for an hour? Ethan asked. Of course. And the Henderson contract was finalized this morning. Legal needs your signature by end of day. I'll take care of it. Ethan led Lena past Jennifer's desk into his office, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. The Golden Gate Bridge was visible in the distance, cables gleaming in the late morning sun. Wow, Lena breathed, walking to the windows. This view. It's better at sunset. Ethan stood beside her. I used to stay late just to watch it, before Maya. Now I'm usually gone by 6. Lena turned slowly, taking in the rest of the space. Minimalist furniture. A few photos on the desk, Maya at various ages, one of Sarah holding newborn Maya in the hospital. No awards displayed, no ego wall of achievements. This isn't what I expected, she said. What did you expect? I don't know, something more, flashy? You're a billionaire tech CEO. Shouldn't there be more showing off? I leave that to the people who need to prove something. Ethan sat on the edge of his desk. This is just where I work. It's not who I am. Who are you then? It was the question he'd been avoiding, the one he'd been deflecting with vague answers about management and meetings. But she deserved the truth, all of it. I'm someone who got lucky, Ethan said quietly. I had an idea in college, built an app with my roommate that happened to solve a problem people didn't know they had. We sold it for enough money to start a real company. I worked 80-hour weeks for 5 years, missed my own wedding anniversary twice, barely saw Sarah during the best years of our marriage because I was too busy building something I thought mattered more. He stopped, the old guilt rising. And then she got sick, and suddenly none of this meant anything. The company, the money, the success, it was all just noise. She died, and I had a 3-year-old daughter who needed me to be a father, not a CEO. So I hired people smarter than me to run the day-to-day, and I stepped back. I still make the big decisions, still show up for the important meetings, but most of my energy goes to Maya now. That's why you didn't tell me, Lena said, about all of this. You didn't want to be defined by it. I've spent 5 years trying to be just a dad who likes coffee and can't cook anything except pasta. Meeting you outside Murray's, you didn't know who I was, and that was... He searched for words. Freeing. You liked me for me, not for what I could do for you or what I represented. Lena crossed the space between them, standing close enough that he could see the green flecks in her eyes. I still like you for you. This doesn't change that. Doesn't it? Now you know I've been lying by omission this whole time. You weren't lying. You were protecting yourself. There's a difference. She touched his face gently. And honestly, the fact that you'd rather be known as a single dad who makes his daughter's breakfast than a tech billionaire makes me like you more, not less. Even though I'm complicated? Everyone's complicated. At least your complications come with a nice view. He kissed her then, properly this time, without the shock and surprise of that first kiss in her apartment. This was deliberate, a choice they were both making with full knowledge of what it meant. When they broke apart, Lena was smiling. So what now? Do I get to see the secret CEO lair? The room where you keep all your money? That's not how it works. Disappointing. I was hoping for a vault with gold coins I could swim through like Scrooge McDuck. You watch too many cartoons. I'm a children's book illustrator. It's research. They spent the next hour in his office, Ethan explaining the company, what they did, how it worked. Lena asked good questions, genuinely interested, and he found himself talking about the business in a way he hadn't in years, with passion, with excitement, remembering why he'd started this in the first place. You love it, Lena observed. Even though you said it didn't matter when Sarah died, you still love this. It's complicated. Everything about you is complicated. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya's school. Maya fell on the playground. Minor scrape, but asking for you. Can you come? I have to go, Ethan said, already moving. Maya's hurt. Is she okay? They said minor, but... Go. I'll get an Uber back. Come with me, Ethan said without thinking. Then, realizing what he'd suggested, I mean, if you want, you don't have to. Are you sure? Yeah, I'm sure. They made it to Riverside Elementary in 15 minutes, probably breaking several traffic laws in the process. The school nurse had Maya in her office, a bandage on her knee and tear tracks on her face that made Ethan's chest ache. Bug, what happened? I was trying to do a flip off the monkey bars like Sarah Chen, but I fell. Maya's lower lip trembled. It really hurt, Dad. I bet it did. Ethan knelt beside her, checking the bandage. Does it still hurt now? A little. Mostly my pride. He couldn't help smiling. Your pride, huh? Where'd you learn that phrase? You say it all the time. Behind him, Lena made a soft sound that might have been a laugh. Maya noticed her for the first time. Lena, did you come too? I did. Your dad was worried about you. It's just a scrape. I'm not dying or anything. Maya, Ethan warned. Sorry, I know we don't joke about that. She looked between them, processing something. Wait, you were together? Like, together? We were at Dad's office, Lena said carefully. Maya's eyes widened. You showed her your work? You never show anyone your work. Lena's special, Ethan said before he could think better of it. I know. Maya said it with such simple certainty that both adults fell silent. I could tell when we were at the park. You smile different when she's around. Different how? Ethan asked, curious despite himself. Like you mean it. The nurse cleared her throat. She's all set to go back to class, Mr. Cole. Just keep the bandage clean, change it tonight. Actually, Ethan said, making a decision, I think we'll take the rest of the day. Is that okay, Bug? Want to play hooky with me and Lena? Maya's face lit up like Christmas morning. Really? We can just leave? Sometimes you get to break the rules. They signed Maya out, and Ethan drove them to the beach, the same stretch of sand where he'd scattered Sarah's ashes 5 years ago. He hadn't been back since, had avoided it deliberately, but today it felt right. The ocean was rough, waves crashing against the shore with enough force to send spray into the air. Maya ran ahead despite her injured knee, chasing seagulls with the tireless energy only children possessed. She's resilient, Lena observed, watching her. She has to be. Lost her mom young, has a dad who's still figuring out how to do this right. You're doing better than you think. They walked along the waterline, close enough that their shoulders brushed. Maya found a stick and started drawing in the sand, elaborate designs that would disappear with the next wave. Can I ask you something? Lena said. About Sarah. About what happened. Okay. Do you feel guilty? About this. About us. Ethan thought about the question, giving it the weight it deserved. At first, yeah. When I realized I was starting to care about you, there was this voice in my head saying I was betraying her memory, that 5 years wasn't long enough, that I should still be mourning. And now? Now I think Sarah would be pissed if she knew I'd wasted 5 years being lonely when I could have been living. He smiled sadly. She used to say life was too short to waste on should-haves and what-ifs. I didn't really understand what she meant until she was gone. A wave came in stronger than expected, soaking their shoes. Lena yelped and jumped back, but Ethan just laughed, letting the cold water wash over his feet. You're not even going to move? Lena asked. It's just water. It's freezing water. Still just water. She shook her head but stepped forward anyway, letting the next wave catch her too. They stood there like idiots, soaking wet from the knees down, and Ethan felt something loosen in his chest that he hadn't realized was tight. Maya ran over, splashing through the waves. You guys look ridiculous. You're about to look ridiculous too, Ethan said, and scooped her up, threatening to drop her in the water. She shrieked with laughter, squirming in his arms. Dad, don't you dare! What do you think, Lena? Should I? Absolutely, Lena said with mock seriousness. It builds character. Traitor! Maya yelled, but she was laughing. Ethan set her down gently, and she immediately tried to splash both of them, starting a water fight that left all three of them soaked and breathless. When they finally collapsed on the dry sand, Maya between them, Ethan couldn't remember the last time he'd felt this light. This is the best playing hooky day ever, Maya announced. Glad you approve. Can Lena come to my school play next week? Ethan glanced at Lena, giving her an out if she wanted it. But she smiled and said, I wouldn't miss it. I need to see this singing mushroom situation for myself. It's going to be amazing, Maya said confidently. I have 2 whole songs. They stayed at the beach until the sun started its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that reminded Ethan why he'd fallen in love with this city in the first place. Maya built sandcastles while he and Lena talked about everything and nothing, the kind of conversation that happened when you weren't trying to impress anyone, just existing together. Thank you for today, Lena said as they watched Maya add shells to her elaborate fortress. For what? For letting me in. To your life, your office, your daughter. I know that's not easy for you. It's getting easier. His phone rang, breaking the moment. Marcus, his head of security. I need to take this, Ethan said, standing and walking a few feet away. What did you find? Quite a bit, actually. Marcus's voice was grim. Ryan Castellane has a pattern. 3 ex-girlfriends before Ms. Moore, all with similar stories. Harassment, following them, showing up at their workplaces. One filed for a restraining order 2 years ago. Ethan's hand tightened on the phone. And it was denied. Insufficient evidence. But I pulled the records, talked to some people. This guy is textbook obsessive. He's also smart, never crosses the line far enough to get arrested, but he makes their lives hell until they either take him back or move away. What happened to the one who got the restraining order? Moved to Portland, changed her name. She was scared enough to uproot her entire life. Ethan looked back at Lena, sitting in the sand with Maya, both of them laughing at something. The thought of her being that scared, of having to run to feel safe, made something cold and dark settle in his stomach. I want protection on her, he said. Discreet. She doesn't need to know, but I want someone watching her apartment, following her when she goes out. If Ryan gets within 100 feet of her, I want to know immediately. Already arranged. I took the liberty after our first conversation. Good. Anything else? Yeah. Ryan's been digging into you too. Hired a private investigator, looks like. Trying to find leverage, something to use against you. Let him dig. He won't find anything. Everyone has something, boss. Not anything he can use. Ethan paused. Keep me updated. And Marcus? Make sure Maya's school has Ryan's photo, his car description, everything. If he shows up there, I'll have him arrested before he gets out of his car. Ethan hung up and stood for a moment, watching the waves, trying to calm the rage building in his chest. Ryan wasn't just a problem anymore. He was a threat, not just to Lena, but potentially to Maya, and that was unacceptable. Everything okay? Lena asked when he returned. Yeah, just work stuff. She studied his face, and he knew she didn't believe him, but she didn't push. Maya saved him by announcing she was starving, could they please get pizza, and the moment passed. They drove to a small pizzeria Maya loved, the kind of place with plastic tablecloths and waitresses who called everyone honey. Maya ordered her usual, pepperoni with extra cheese, and proceeded to talk Lena's ear off about school, her friends, her upcoming birthday party. I'm turning 9, she announced proudly. Dad says I can have 10 friends over. That's a lot of 9-year-olds, Lena observed. It's going to be chaos, Ethan confirmed. Good chaos, though, right? Is there such a thing? Lena laughed and Maya joined in, and Ethan sat there watching the two of them bond over pizza and found himself thinking dangerous thoughts. Thoughts about what it might be like if this became normal, if Lena was a regular presence in their lives, if Maya had someone else to talk to besides him. Thoughts about family, about future, about things he'd assumed died with Sarah. After dinner, Ethan dropped Lena at her apartment despite her protests that she could take an Uber. I'll walk you up, he said. It's fine, really. Lena, I'm walking you up. She must have heard something in his voice because she didn't argue further. They took the stairs to her second-floor apartment, Maya between them, chattering about the beach and the pizza and how she couldn't wait for Lena to see her play. At Lena's door, Maya hugged her goodbye with the easy affection of a child who'd already decided someone was safe. See you at the play, Maya said. I'll be there. After Maya skipped back down the stairs, Ethan lingered. Lock the door. Don't open it unless you know who it is. Ethan, what's going on? And don't say nothing. I can tell something's wrong. He wanted to lie to protect her from knowing just how dangerous Ryan might be, but he'd promised honesty. Marcus found 3 other women with the same story. Ryan harassing them, stalking them. One was scared enough to move states and change her name. Lena's face went pale. Oh my God. I have security watching your building. You won't see them, but they're there. If Ryan shows up, you can't do that. That's too much. It's too expensive. I don't care about the expense. I care about you being safe. Ethan, he kissed her, cutting off her protests. When he pulled back, he kept his hands on her face. I know this is fast. I know we're figuring this out as we go. But I need you to let me help, please. This isn't your problem. It is now. You made it mine when you asked me to be your fake boyfriend. And now it's real, which means your problems are my problems. That's not how this works. It is for me. She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Okay, but I'm paying you back. Somehow. Deal. He kissed her again, softer this time, and headed back downstairs where Maya was waiting in the car, pretending not to be watching them through the window. You like her, Maya said as they drove home. I do. Really like her, the way you liked Mom. Ethan glanced at his daughter, trying to read her expression in the rear-view mirror. Is that okay with you? Maya was quiet for a long moment. Then, Mom would want you to be happy, and Lena makes you happy. So, yeah, it's okay. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just notice sometimes. That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan sat in his office going through the files Marcus had sent him on Ryan. Police reports that went nowhere. Testimony from ex-girlfriends too scared to push their cases. A pattern of behavior that somehow never quite crossed into prosecutable territory. Ryan was smart. He knew how to stay just inside the law while making someone's life unbearable. But Ethan was smarter, and he had resources Ryan couldn't match. He made a series of phone calls to his lawyer, to a friend who worked in the DA's office, to the head of security at Lena's apartment building. By midnight, he had a plan. It wasn't pretty, and it probably wasn't entirely legal, but it would work. Ryan wanted to play games? Fine. But he'd picked the wrong opponent. Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from Lena. Can't sleep. Thinking about everything Marcus told you. I'm scared. He called her instead of texting back. Hey, she answered on the first ring. Hey yourself, talk to me. I keep thinking about those other women, how scared they must have been, how one of them had to completely restart her life. Her voice cracked. What if I can't make him stop? What if this is just my life now? It's not. I promise you it's not. You can't promise that. Watch me. Ethan's voice was steel. Ryan has gotten away with this because his victims didn't have the resources to fight back. You do. You have me, and I have lawyers and security, and enough money to make his life very difficult if he doesn't back off. I don't want you to have to fight my battles. Too late. I'm already in this. And Lena, I'm not someone who loses. She was quiet for a moment, then, thank you for everything, for caring, for protecting me, even though we've only known each other a month. 6 weeks, actually. You're counting? I counted from the day you ran up to me outside Murray's and asked me to be your fake boyfriend. Best worst decision I ever made. Same. They talked until she finally sounded tired enough to sleep, about nothing important, just the sound of each other's voices in the dark. When they hung up, Ethan sat in the silence of his house and made a decision. Tomorrow, he'd move on Ryan. Hard. Tonight, he'd let himself believe that love might be possible again, that happiness wasn't something you only got once in a lifetime, that second chances were real. Tomorrow would be for battle. Tonight was for hope. Morning came with a text from Marcus that made Ethan's coffee taste bitter. Ryan was outside her building last night, 11:47 p.m. to 1:23 a.m., just sitting in his car. Security has photos. Ethan stared at the message, his grip tightening on his phone. While he'd been talking to Lena, reassuring her, promising her safety, Ryan had been sitting outside her apartment like some kind of predator watching his prey. He forwarded the message to his lawyer with a single instruction: use this. Maya appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas, hair sticking up in wild directions. You look mad. I'm not mad, Bug. Dad, I'm 8, not stupid. He managed to smile. You're right. I'm a little frustrated with work stuff. Is it about Lena? Sometimes his daughter's perceptiveness was unsettling. Why would you think that? Because you only look like that when something's wrong with someone you care about. You looked the same way when Mom got sick. Maya climbed onto the chair next to him. Is Lena sick? No, sweetheart. She's not sick. She just has someone bothering her who won't leave her alone. The boyfriend from before? The one at the coffee shop? You remember that? I remember everything. Maya tilted her head, considering. Are you going to make him stop? I'm going to try. You will. You're good at fixing things. She said it with such simple faith that Ethan felt his chest tighten. Can we have pancakes? The shift from serious to mundane was so classically Maya that Ethan couldn't help but laugh. Yeah, Bug, we can have pancakes. While Maya drowned her breakfast in syrup, Ethan's phone rang. His lawyer, David Chen, never won for small talk. I've got good news and bad news. Which do you want first? Bad. The photos Marcus sent? They're helpful, but not enough for a restraining order on their own. He's parked on a public street. He's not approaching her building. Technically, he's not doing anything illegal. Ethan's jaw clenched. And the good news? The good news is I reached out to the woman in Portland, the one who moved. She's willing to talk, maybe even testify if we can build a case. And I found another ex, one who didn't make Marcus's list. She works in Seattle now, and Ryan did the same thing to her, followed her, called her obsessively, showed up at her job until she got transferred. Can we use that? We can try. I'm building a pattern of behavior case. It's not quick, but it's solid. David paused. Ethan, this could get ugly. If we go after him hard, he's going to push back. Are you prepared for that? What's the worst he can do? Go to the press, accuse you of using your money and influence to intimidate him, paint himself as the victim and you as the billionaire bully. Let him try. I'm serious. This could affect your company, your reputation. You need to think about Maya. Ethan looked at his daughter, currently trying to fold a pancake into some kind of origami shape. I'm thinking about Maya. I'm thinking about the kind of man I want her to grow up knowing. Someone who stands up for people who need help, or someone who looks the other way because it's easier. All right, I'm with you. But we do this smart, not reckless. Agreed. After dropping Maya at school, Ethan drove to Lena's apartment. She answered the door in paint-splattered sweats, her hair in a messy bun, looking exhausted. "You didn't sleep," he said. "How can you tell?" "The circles under your eyes, the fact that you're stress painting at 8 in the morning." He nodded toward the easel visible through her doorway, covered in angry slashes of red and black. Lena stepped aside to let him in. "Ryan was outside last night. I saw his car." "I know. My security team photographed him. That should make me feel better." Why doesn't it make me feel better? Because knowing someone's watching you is different from knowing they can't hurt you. Ethan pulled her into his arms, and she melted against him like she'd been holding herself together until someone gave her permission not to. They stood like that for a long time, her breathing gradually slowing, his hand stroking her hair in a rhythm he didn't consciously choose. When she finally pulled back, her eyes were red but dry. "I hate this," she said. "I hate being scared in my own home. I hate that he's taken something that should be good, us, and twisted it into another way to control me." "He doesn't control you." "Doesn't he? I'm changing my routine because of him. Installing extra locks, looking over my shoulder every time I leave my apartment. That's control, Ethan." She was right, and they both knew it. Ryan didn't have to touch her to hurt her. The fear was enough. "My lawyer's building a case," Ethan said. "We've got 3 ex-girlfriends willing to testify about his pattern of behavior. It's going to take time, but time I spend being terrified. Time you spend being protected. I've got a team on you 24/7, Lena. He can't get to you. Until your team isn't there. Until I'm alone, and he decides following isn't enough anymore." The fear in her voice made Ethan's decision easy. "Move in with me." Lena blinked. "What?" "Move in with me. My house has security, gates, cameras. Ryan can't sit outside watching you there, and you won't be alone." "Ethan, we've been dating for like 2 weeks. Real dating. That's insane." "So was asking a stranger to be your fake boyfriend, but you did it anyway." "That was different." "How?" "That was desperation. This is..." She gestured helplessly between them. "This is real life, real consequences. What about Maya? You can't just move a woman into your house when you have an 8-year-old daughter." "Maya likes you. She already asked when you're coming over again." "That's not the same as living together. Kids need stability, routine. Not their dad's girlfriend suddenly appearing at breakfast every morning." "Then we tell her the truth, that someone's bothering you and you need a safe place to stay." "Maya understands safety. She understands protecting people." Lena walked to her window, looking down at the street where Ryan had been parked hours ago. "If I do this, he wins. He's making me run, making me hide. That's exactly what he wants." "No, what he wants is for you to be alone and vulnerable. This is you making a strategic choice to be safe." Ethan joined her at the window. "I'm not saying you have to stay forever, just until we can neutralize him legally, just until you can breathe again." "And what do you get out of this, besides a scared woman taking up space in your house?" "I get to know you're safe. I get to stop imagining worst-case scenarios every time you don't text me back immediately. I get to wake up knowing you're not alone dealing with this." He turned her to face him. "And maybe, if I'm being completely honest, I get to see if this thing between us works in real life, not just in stolen moments and fake dates." "You're serious?" "Completely." Lena studied his face, searching for something. "This is crazy." "I'm starting to think crazy is our default setting." She laughed, but it was shaky. "If I say yes, I need ground rules. Real ones, not the fake dating kind." "Okay, name them." "I pay rent? Not market rate because I can't afford what you probably pay in property taxes, but something. I'm not a charity case." "Agreed." "I get my own space. A room, an area, something that's mine. The house has 6 bedrooms. Take your pick. And we tell Maya the truth. All of it. Why I'm there, what we're dealing with. She deserves to know." Ethan hesitated on that one. His instinct was to protect Maya from the darker parts of the world, to let her stay innocent a little longer. But Lena was right. His daughter was smart enough to sense when adults were lying, and she'd trust them more if they were honest. Okay, we tell her. And if this doesn't work out, if we realize we're terrible roommates or we can't stand each other after a week, then we figure it out like adults. No pressure, no expectations, just two people trying to keep each other safe. Lena was quiet for a long moment, and Ethan could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. The fear warring with pride, the need for safety battling the desire to stand her ground. 1 month, she said finally. Trial basis. If it's a disaster, I find somewhere else. Deal. I can't believe I'm agreeing to this. I can't believe I suggested it. We're both insane. Completely. She kissed him then, hard and desperate, like she was trying to convince herself this was real. When they broke apart, she rested her forehead against his. When? She asked. Today. Now. Pack what you need for the next few days, and we'll come back for the rest later. Ethan, Ryan was outside your apartment last night for almost 2 hours, Lena. I'm not leaving you here another night. The fear flickered across her face again, and she nodded. Okay. Give me 20 minutes. She packed faster than he expected, throwing clothes into a suitcase with the efficiency of someone used to emergency departures. Her art supplies took longer. She was particular about her brushes, her paints, the sketchbooks that held months of work. I'm going to need studio space, she said, carefully wrapping a canvas. There's a sunroom on the second floor, east-facing windows, natural light most of the day. You've thought about this. I've been thinking about you moving in since about 3 seconds after I suggested it. Lena smiled despite everything. Quick thinker. When I need to be. They loaded her car and his with the essentials, and Ethan followed her to his house, watching his rear-view mirror the entire drive. No sign of Ryan, but that didn't mean he wasn't there, didn't mean he wasn't planning something. The house sat on 2 acres in the hills, all glass and modern angles surrounded by oak trees. The gate required a code, and the driveway curved up through carefully maintained landscaping that Ethan paid someone else to handle because he couldn't keep a houseplant alive. Holy shit, Lena breathed as the house came into view. You didn't mention you lived in a museum. It's not a museum, it's just a house. Ethan, there's a fountain. You have a fountain. Sarah wanted a fountain. The mention of his dead wife seemed to sober Lena. She parked and got out slowly, taking in the scope of where she'd just agreed to live. Ethan tried to see it through her eyes. The imposing entrance, the manicured grounds, the sheer excess of space for 2 people. This is where Maya grows up? Lena asked. Is that a problem? No, just different from my childhood apartment in Queens. She grabbed a suitcase from her trunk. Where should I put my stuff? Ethan led her inside, past the open-concept living space that flowed into a kitchen bigger than Lena's entire apartment. Up the curved staircase to the second floor, past Maya's room with its explosion of panda decorations, past his master suite, to a guest room at the end of the hall. This okay? He asked, opening the door. The room was painted a soft gray, with a queen bed and a reading chair by the window. Attached bathroom, walk-in closet, a desk that looked out over the backyard where Maya's swing set stood unused most days. It's bigger than my apartment, Lena said faintly. The sunroom's through there. Ethan pointed to a connecting door. I wasn't kidding about the light. It's probably the best room in the house for painting. Lena walked through and he heard her sharp intake of breath. The sunroom was all windows and exposed beams, with built-in shelving perfect for art supplies and enough floor space for a proper studio setup. Sarah painted too, Ethan said quietly when Lena didn't speak. Not professionally, just for fun. This was supposed to be her space, but she never got to use it much. She got sick before she could really make it hers. Ethan, Lena turned to face him. Are you sure about this? This room, it's special. It meant something to her. It did. And now it's going to mean something to you. That feels right. She crossed the space and hugged him, and Ethan held her, surrounded by windows and light and the ghost of a different life. Thank you, Lena whispered, for all of this, for being crazy enough to suggest it. Thank you for being crazy enough to say yes. They spent the rest of the morning getting her settled, arranging her clothes in the massive closet, setting up her art supplies in the sunroom. Ethan showed her how the security system worked, gave her all the codes, made sure she knew where everything was. At 3:30, he left to pick up Maya, trying to figure out how to explain this development to his daughter without terrifying her. Maya climbed into the car, chattering about her day, about the math test she'd aced, and the boy who'd tried to put a frog in her backpack. It wasn't until they were almost home that she paused. Is something different? What makes you say that? You keep looking at me weird. Ethan pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. I need to talk to you about something. Something kind of serious. Maya's eyes went wide. Is it bad? No, Bug. Nothing bad. But it is important. He took a breath. Remember Lena's ex-boyfriend? The one from the coffee shop? The one you pretended to be her boyfriend for. Yeah, well, he's been bothering her, following her, sitting outside her apartment, making her feel unsafe. Maya's expression turned fierce. That's mean. It is mean and scary for Lena. So I asked if she wanted to stay here for a while where we have security and she doesn't have to be alone. Like a sleepover? Kind of a long sleepover, yeah. Maya processed this with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Is she your real girlfriend now, not just pretend? Yeah, she's my real girlfriend. And she's staying in our house? In the guest room. Is that okay with you? Will she be here for breakfast? Probably. Will she watch movies with us? If she wants to. Will she... Maya stopped and her voice got smaller. Will she try to be my new mom? Ethan's chest ached. No, sweetheart. Nobody's ever going to replace your mom. Lena knows that. I know that. Your mom will always be your mom. But Lena could be like an extra person. Who cares about me? If that's what you want. But only if you want it. Your feelings come first, always. Maya sat quietly for a long moment, and Ethan waited, giving her space to process. Finally, she unbuckled her seatbelt and looked at him with those two wise eyes. I think it's okay. If she's nice to you and she makes you smile the real way, then she can stay. You're sure? I'm sure. But Dad? Yeah? If her ex-boyfriend comes here, will you protect her? Absolutely. Good. Because protecting people we care about is important. She opened her door. Can we tell her about the mushroom play? I want her to know about my songs. Just like that, crisis averted. Maya bounced into the house calling for Lena, and Ethan followed more slowly, marveling at his daughter's capacity for acceptance, for love, for making complicated things simple. He found them in the kitchen, Maya already showing Lena her script, explaining the intricate plot of whatever bizarre production the elementary school had concocted. Lena listened with genuine interest, asking questions, laughing at the absurd parts. And then the mushrooms have to convince the vegetables that sunshine is important, so we sing Let the Light In. That's my big solo. That sounds amazing, Lena said. I definitely need to see this. Dad got you tickets, right? Front row, Ethan confirmed. Maya beamed, then grabbed Lena's hand. Want to see my room? I have 47 pandas. 47? That's very specific. I keep a list. She dragged Lena upstairs and Ethan leaned against the kitchen counter, listening to their voices echo through the house. The sound of it, Maya's enthusiasm, Lena's warm responses, felt right in a way he hadn't expected. His phone buzzed. Marcus. Ryan just drove by your house 3 times. Didn't stop, but he's clearly checking it out. Want me to intervene? Ethan's hands curled into fists. So Ryan had already figured out where Lena went. Of course he had. Probably followed her from her apartment, or maybe he'd done more research on Ethan, found his address through public records. No intervention yet, Ethan texted back, but increase perimeter security. I want to know if he comes back. Already on it. I've got 2 additional units on the property. He won't get past the gate. Ethan wanted to believe that. Wanted to trust that walls and cameras and security teams would be enough. But he'd seen too much, knew too well that determined people found ways around obstacles. Dinner that night was surprisingly normal. Maya dominated the conversation, telling Lena about school and her friends and her opinions on everything from the best kind of pizza to why cats were superior to dogs. Lena engaged with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions, laughing in the right places. You're good with her, Ethan said later. after Maya was in bed and they were sitting in his living room with glasses of wine. She's easy to be good with. She's smart, funny, kind. You've raised an incredible kid. I've mostly just tried not to screw her up too badly. You've done more than that. Lena curled into the corner of the couch. She feels safe, loved. She knows her place in the world. That's not nothing. Her place in the world is currently being disrupted by her dad's girlfriend moving in because a stalker won't leave her alone. She seemed okay with it. She's 8. She doesn't fully understand what we're dealing with. Lena set down her wine glass. Do you regret it? Asking me to move in? No. Do you regret saying yes? Ask me in a month. They smiled at each other across the distance of the couch, and Ethan wondered how they'd gotten here so fast. 6 weeks ago, she was a stranger asking a desperate favor. Now she was living in his house, bonding with his daughter, sleeping 3 doors down from him. What are you thinking? Lena asked. That this is the fastest I've ever moved in a relationship, including with Sarah. Should we slow down? Probably, but I don't want to. Me neither. She moved closer, close enough that he could smell her shampoo. Is it weird that this feels normal? That being here with you and Maya feels like it makes sense? If it is, we're both weird. I can live with that. Ethan kissed her, slow and sweet, and tried not to think about Ryan circling his house like a shark. Tried not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. Tried to just exist in this moment, with this woman, in this tentative happiness they were building. When they broke apart, Lena rested her head on his shoulder. Tell me something true. Like what? Like something you've never told anyone. Something that's just for me. Ethan thought about it. Sometimes I'm terrified I'm not enough for Maya. That she needs a mother figure, someone who understands girl things and emotions and all the stuff I'm clueless about. I can braid her hair and help with homework and make sure she eats vegetables, but I can't be both parents, and I'm scared that when she gets older, she's going to realize everything she missed. She's not going to think that. How do you know? Because she has you, and you are enough, more than enough. Lena lifted her head to look at him. But if it helps, I'm happy to be the person who teaches her about makeup and periods and all the things that will make you deeply uncomfortable. We've been dating 2 weeks. Real dating. We've been fake dating for 6 weeks. That's like 3 months in normal people time. That's not how time works. It is in rom-coms, and this whole situation is basically a rom-com with a stalker subplot. Every good rom-com needs conflict. Despite everything, Ethan laughed. You're ridiculous. You like ridiculous. I really do. They stayed up too late, talking and kissing and pretending they weren't both listening for sounds that didn't belong. When Lena finally went to her room, Ethan checked the security feed one more time. Nothing, just his empty driveway, the gate closed, the perimeter secure. But he couldn't shake the feeling that Ryan was out there somewhere, planning his next move. And Ethan needed to be ready. The next morning, he called David Chen again. Where are we with building the case? Moving forward, I've got statements from 2 exes so far, working on the 3rd. But Ethan, this is going to take months. The legal system doesn't move fast. I don't have months. He drove by my house yesterday. He knows where Lana is. That's actually good for us. We can document his escalation, show a pattern of, I don't want to document his escalation. I want to stop it. David was quiet for a moment. What are you thinking? I'm thinking that men like Ryan respond to power, and I have more power than he does. Ethan, be careful. If you do something that looks like intimidation or coercion, I'm not going to do anything illegal, but I'm going to make him understand that continuing this behavior will cost him more than he's willing to pay. How? Leave that to me. You just keep building the legal case as backup. After he hung up, Ethan made another call to an old friend from college who now ran a boutique PR firm that specialized in crisis management and reputation protection. Rachel, I need a favor. Ethan Cole. It's been, 5 years? About that. Listen, I've got a situation. Someone who's harassing a friend of mine. I need information on him, where he works, who his clients are, what his professional reputation looks like. This is about that guy who's been stalking your girlfriend, isn't it? Marcus already called me. Of course he did. Ryan Castellane works in commercial real estate, mid-level firm. He's ambitious, wants to make partner, very concerned with his image. Rachel paused. He's also apparently an asshole who treats women like possessions. Can you find out who his biggest clients are? Already did. Want me to email you the list? Please? And Rachel, this stays between us. When have I ever been anything but discreet? The list came through within an hour. Ethan studied it, recognizing several names, CEOs he'd met at conferences, investors in his network, people who valued their reputations and wouldn't want to be associated with someone who had a harassment problem. He started making calls. By the end of the day, 3 of Ryan's major clients had received anonymous tips about his behavior toward ex-girlfriends, complete with documentation. Nothing illegal. Nothing that couldn't be verified. Just information presented in a way that made them question whether they wanted someone like that representing their interests. It was ruthless. It was calculated. It was exactly the kind of thing Ethan had sworn he'd never do, using his influence to destroy someone's career. But this wasn't about business. This was about protection, and he'd burn down Ryan's entire professional life if it meant keeping Lena safe. That evening, as he was helping Maya with her homework, his phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? You son of a bitch! Ryan's voice was shaking with rage. You think you can ruin my career? You think you can use your money and your connections to destroy me? I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play dumb. I lost 3 clients today. 3. All because someone sent them lies about me. Maybe they weren't lies. I'll sue you. Slander, defamation, whatever my lawyers can make stick. Go ahead. Discovery should be fun. I'm sure all your ex-girlfriends would love to testify about your behavior. Ryan was breathing hard now. You don't know who you're fucking with. Actually, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A man who can't accept that a woman doesn't want him. A man who thinks stalking and harassment are acceptable responses to rejection. A man who's about to learn a very expensive lesson about consequences. Ethan kept his voice calm, level. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave Lena alone. Completely. No calls, no texts, no driving by her apartment or my house. You're going to act like she doesn't exist. And if I don't? Then I'll make sure every client you have, every potential client, every professional contact knows exactly what kind of person you are. I'll fund a legal case so airtight you'll drown in subpoenas. I'll make your life so difficult that moving to another city won't be far enough to escape it. You can't, I can. And I will. The only question is whether you're smart enough to walk away now or stupid enough to make me follow through. Silence. Then, she's not worth this. She's not worth throwing away your reputation, your credibility. That's where you're wrong, Ethan interrupted. She's worth everything, and that's something you'll never understand. He hung up before Ryan could respond. His hands were shaking. He'd just made an enemy, a real one, someone who might actually retaliate. But he'd also drawn a line in the sand, made it clear that Lena wasn't alone anymore. Maya looked up from her math worksheet. Who was that? Nobody important, Bug. You looked scary when you were talking. Sometimes you have to be scary to protect people you love. She considered this. Like a superhero? Something like that. Cool. That night, Ethan told Lena what he'd done. All of it. The calls to Ryan's clients, the threats, the line he'd crossed. She was quiet for a long time. Then, you could have just told me. Asked me if that's what I wanted. I know. I'm sorry. I should have. But you didn't because you were protecting me. Yes. And now Ryan knows you're serious, that you'll actually follow through. Yes. Lena stood from the couch and walked to the window, looking out at the dark yard. I should be angry. You made decisions about my life without consulting me. You escalated a situation that was already volatile. You're right. I'm sorry. But I'm not angry. She turned to face him. I'm relieved. For the first time in months, I feel like maybe this will actually end, that maybe I don't have to be scared anymore. You don't. I promise you don't. Don't make promises you can't keep. I never do. She crossed the room and kissed him, hard and grateful, and Ethan held her like she was something precious he might break. Thank you, she whispered against his mouth, for being willing to fight for me. Always. But even as he said it, even as he believed it, a small voice in the back of his mind wondered if he'd just made things worse, if pushing Ryan would make him back down, or make him desperate enough to do something they couldn't prepare for. 3 days of silence followed. No calls from Ryan, no cars circling the property, no angry messages. Marcus reported that Ryan had gone to work, gone home, stayed put, the kind of quiet that should have been reassuring but instead felt like the pause before a storm. Lena settled into the house with surprising ease, her art supplies spreading across the sunroom like she'd always belonged there. Maya took to having her around with the adaptability of children, asking Lena's opinion on everything from her outfit choices to whether unicorns could realistically fly with those tiny wings. Definitely not, Lena said seriously over breakfast on the 4th day. The wing-to-body mass ratio is all wrong. They'd need wings at least 3 times that size. Maya looked delighted. That's what I said. But Emma Chen said magic makes it work. Magic is a cop-out answer for poor biomechanical design. Ethan watched them debate mythical creature aerodynamics while he made coffee and wondered when his life had turned into this. Domestic mornings with a woman who wasn't his wife. His daughter laughing more than she had in years. This fragile bubble of happiness that felt too good to last. He was right to worry. The call came at 9:15, just as Ethan was getting ready to drive Maya to school. David Chen, and his voice carried the weight of bad news. We have a problem. Ethan stepped into his office, closing the door. What kind of problem? Ryan filed a restraining order against you, claims you've been harassing him, threatening his livelihood, using your position to intimidate him. That's ridiculous. Is it? Because I have 3 of his clients who received anonymous information about his personal life. Information that could only have come from someone with significant resources and connections. Ethan's jaw tightened. He's been stalking Lena for months, and we're building a case to prove that. But Ethan, you can't fight fire with fire here. The legal system doesn't care who started it. It cares who can prove what. And right now, Ryan has documentation of lost clients, threatening phone calls from you, and a narrative that paints him as the victim of a jealous billionaire. So what do? We show up to the hearing, we present our evidence, and we pray the judge sees through his bullshit. David paused. But I need you to be honest with me. Is there anything else you've done? Anything he could use against you? Ethan thought about the security team watching Lena's old apartment, the background checks on Ryan, the calls he'd made to influential people in Ryan's industry. All legal, technically, but none of it would look good in court. Nothing illegal, he said. That's not what I asked. That's the answer you're getting. After hanging up, Ethan sat in his office for a long moment, trying to control the rage building in his chest. Ryan was smart, smarter than Ethan had given him credit for. He'd taken Ethan's protective measures and twisted them into weapons, turned the narrative around so completely that now Ethan was the aggressor. A knock on the door. Lena, holding 2 cups of coffee. You look like you need this, she said, handing him one. Ryan filed a restraining order against me. The color drained from her face. What? How? Why would? Because I pushed him. Because I made threats I shouldn't have made, and now he's using it against me. Ethan took a long drink of coffee that burned all the way down. The hearing is next week. This is my fault. No, this is Ryan's fault, and my fault for thinking I could intimidate him into backing down. He set down the coffee and pulled her close. But we'll get through it. David's good, and we have evidence of Ryan's behavior. What if we don't? What if the judge believes him? Then I won't be able to contact him, which means we handle this differently. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. Lena pulled back to look at him. You can't keep fighting my battles for me. This has already cost you too much. It hasn't cost me anything I'm not willing to pay. Ethan, I mean it. Whatever happens at that hearing, whatever Ryan tries next, I'm not backing down. You're too important. She kissed him then, soft and desperate, and Ethan tried to pour everything he couldn't say into it. The fear, the determination, the bone-deep certainty that he'd do it all again, even knowing the consequences. When they broke apart, Maya was standing in the doorway with her backpack, looking between them with knowing eyes. Are we going to be late for school? She asked. Never, Bug. Ethan grabbed his keys. Let's go. The next week crawled by in a haze of legal preparation and mounting tension. David prepped Ethan for the hearing, running through potential questions, warning him about Ryan's lawyer who apparently had a reputation for making reasonable people look unhinged on the stand. Stay calm, David instructed. Don't let them bait you. Don't show anger. Don't get defensive. Just answer the questions honestly and let our evidence speak for itself. I can do that. Can you? Because from what I've seen when it comes to protecting Lena, your judgment gets cloudy. My judgment is fine. Your judgment got us into this mess. David was right, and they both knew it. Ethan had let his emotions override his common sense, had acted like a man defending his territory instead of someone working within the system. The night before the hearing, Ethan couldn't sleep. He found Lena in the sunroom at 2 a.m, painting angry strokes of crimson across a canvas. Can't sleep either? He asked. Every time I close my eyes, I imagine tomorrow going wrong. The judge believing Ryan, you getting a restraining order, us having to stay apart while he wins. That's not going to happen. You don't know that. I know that I have the best lawyer in the city, documented evidence of Ryan's pattern of harassment, and 3 ex-girlfriends willing to testify. None of whom are testifying tomorrow because it's just a preliminary hearing. Lena set down her brush. We're going in with your word against his, and he looks like the victim. Ethan crossed to her, taking her paint-stained hands in his. Then we make them see the truth. We show them who he really is. How? I don't know yet, but I'll figure it out. I always do. She leaned against him, exhausted, and they stood like that until the sky started to lighten, holding each other against whatever was coming. The courthouse was everything Ethan hated: cold marble, echoing halls, the smell of anxiety and desperate hope. Ryan was already there with his lawyer, looking appropriately victimized in a subdued suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. When their eyes met across the hallway, Ryan smiled. Small, triumphant, the smile of someone who thought they'd already won. Ethan forced himself to look away. The hearing room was smaller than he expected, just the judge, the lawyers, and the petitioner and respondent. Lena had to wait outside, which felt wrong, but those were the rules. Ryan's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a powerful man using his resources to destroy an innocent person's career out of jealousy and spite. She presented the emails from Ryan's clients terminating their contracts, phone records of Ethan's threatening call, witness statements from Ryan's colleagues about how stressed and frightened he'd been. It was a masterclass in manipulation, and Ethan felt his control slipping with every word. Then it was David's turn. Your Honor, Mr. Castellane has presented himself as a victim, but the reality is quite different. We have documentation of his pattern of harassing behavior toward multiple ex-girlfriends, including Miss Moore, who's currently living with Mr. Cole because she fears for her safety. Objection, Ryan's lawyer said smoothly. Mr. Castellane's past relationships are not relevant to this hearing. They're absolutely relevant if they establish a pattern of behavior that Mr. Cole was responding to. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing, looked between them. I'll allow it. Continue, Mr. Chen. David presented the photographs of Ryan outside Lena's apartment, the text message records, the statements from the ex-girlfriends. It was compelling, and Ethan watched the judge's expression shift from skeptical to thoughtful. But Ryan's lawyer was good. She countered every point, explaining away the parking outside Lena's apartment as chance encounters, the text messages as attempts at reconciliation, the ex-girlfriends as bitter women with axes to grind. And even if all of this were true, she said, it doesn't justify Mr. Cole's actions. Using his wealth and influence to destroy Mr. Castellane's career, making threatening phone calls, creating a climate of fear. This is harassment, Your Honor. This is exactly the kind of intimidation that restraining orders exist to prevent. The judge turned to Ethan. Mr. Cole, I'd like to hear from you directly. Did you contact Mr. Castellane's clients? David shot him a warning look, but Ethan was done with half-truths and legal maneuvering. Yes, Your Honor, I did. And did you threaten him during a phone call? I told him that if he continued to harass Miss Moore, I would take legal action and ensure his behavior was known to his professional network. If that constitutes a threat, then yes, I threatened him. Your Honor, David started, but Ethan kept going. But I made those calls because Mr. Castellane had been stalking the woman I love. He sat outside her apartment for hours. He followed her. He made her so afraid that she couldn't sleep in her own home. And when legal channels moved too slowly to protect her, I used the resources I had to make him stop. That's not how the law works, Mr. Cole. I know, and I'm prepared to accept the consequences of my actions, but I won't apologize for protecting someone who needed help. The judge studied him for a long moment. Then she turned to Ryan. Mr. Castellane, you've presented yourself as a victim here, but I have to say the evidence suggests a more complicated picture. The photographs, the messages, the pattern described by these other women, it's concerning. Your Honor, Ryan said, his voice carefully modulated, I was trying to repair a relationship I valued. If my attempts to reach out to Miss Moore were misconstrued as harassment, I apologize. But that doesn't justify Mr. Cole's campaign against me. A campaign that only started after you refused to leave her alone, the judge observed. A campaign that cost me my career. 3 clients is hardly a career, Mr. Castellane. Ethan saw the flash of anger in Ryan's eyes before he controlled it. With respect, Your Honor, those clients represented significant revenue, and the damage to my reputation will pale in comparison to the damage Miss Moore has suffered from your harassment. The judge leaned back in her chair. Here's my ruling. I'm denying the restraining order. Ryan's face went white. However, the judge continued, looking at Ethan, Mr. Cole, you need to understand that vigilante justice is not acceptable. If Mr. Castellane continues to harass Mrs. Moore, you go through proper legal channels. You don't take matters into your own hands. Is that clear? Yes, Your Honor. Good. She turned back to Ryan. As for you, Mr. Castellane, consider this your warning. If I see any evidence that you've contacted Miss Moore again, if you go anywhere near her or Mr. Cole or his daughter, I will grant a restraining order against you so comprehensive you'll need written permission to breathe in their direction. Do we understand each other? Yes, Your Honor. Ryan's voice was barely controlled rage. Excellent. We're adjourned. The gavel came down, and Ethan felt something in his chest unclench. Not over. He could see in Ryan's eyes that this wasn't over, but a victory nonetheless. In the hallway, Lena was pacing, her face anxious. When she saw Ethan, she ran to him. What happened? He lost. The judge denied the restraining order and warned him to stay away from you. She sagged against him. It's really over? Not yet, David said, joining them. The judge's warning carries weight, but Ryan seems like the type to push boundaries. We should still pursue our own restraining order. Get ahead of this. Agreed, Ethan said. Ryan emerged from the courtroom then, his lawyer beside him, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. When he saw them, he stopped. This isn't finished, he said quietly. Yes, it is. Ethan kept his voice level. You lost. Accept it and move on. I lost today. But you showed your hand, Cole. You proved you'll do anything for her. That's useful information. Is that a threat? It's a fact, and facts have a way of becoming useful. His lawyer pulled him away before Ethan could respond, but the damage was done. The message was clear. Ryan wasn't giving up. On the drive home, Lena was quiet, staring out the window. Talk to me, Ethan said. He's not going to stop. The judge's warning means nothing to him. You heard what he said. He thinks this is just another challenge to overcome, another deal to win. She turned to look at Ethan. What if we can't stop him? What if this just keeps going until someone gets hurt? That's not going to happen. You can't promise that. I can promise that I won't let him hurt you, that whatever it takes, however long it takes, I will keep you safe. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what if the price is too high? What if keeping me safe costs you everything? Your company, your reputation, your relationship with Maya? Then it costs me everything. You're worth it. I'm not, though. I'm just a woman who made a bad choice in boyfriend and got in over her head. Ethan pulled the car over, right there on the side of the road, and turned to face her fully. Listen to me. You are not just anything. You're brave enough to ask a stranger for help. You're talented enough to make a living doing what you love. You're kind enough to bond with my daughter without trying to replace her mother. You're strong enough to keep fighting even when you're terrified. He cupped her face in his hands. And you're important enough to me that I would burn down my entire life before I let someone hurt you. So stop minimizing yourself. Stop acting like you're not worth protecting. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I'm scared. I know, me too. What do? We go home. We have dinner with Maya. We live our lives and refuse to let Ryan take that away from us. And when he comes back, if he comes back, we'll be ready. But being ready didn't stop the waiting from being agonizing. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Marcus reported no activity. Ryan going to work, going home, living an apparently normal life. It should have been reassuring, but instead it felt like watching a countdown clock tick towards 0 without knowing what happened when it reached the end. Lena threw herself into her work, finishing the children's book illustrations and starting a new series of paintings, fierce, vibrant things full of color and life that seemed like a defiant middle finger to fear. Maya's school play came and went, a surreal production that made absolutely no sense but featured his daughter singing her heart out as a very enthusiastic mushroom. Lena laughed until she cried, and Ethan took approximately 700 photos. Life continued. Normal, almost, except for the guards Ethan kept stationed around the property and the way Lena still checked over her shoulder every time she left the house. 3 weeks after the hearing, Ethan's phone rang at midnight. Marcus, which meant trouble. What happened? Ryan's at Lena's old apartment building. He broke in through a window, tripped the alarm. Police are on scene. Ethan was already out of bed, pulling on clothes. Is anyone hurt? No, building was mostly empty at this hour. But Ethan, he was asking the night security guard where Lena moved to. When the guard wouldn't tell him, he started getting aggressive. That's when the alarm went off. I'm coming down there. The police won't let you near him. Restraining order goes both ways after that hearing, remember? Judge said you both stay away from each other. I don't care. You should. You violate that order, you lose all the credibility we built. You become the aggressor again. Ethan forced himself to breathe, to think. Marcus was right. Going down there would only make things worse. Fine, but I want every second documented. Photos, security footage, police reports, everything. Already on it. This is good for us, Ethan. He finally crossed the line far enough to get arrested. Ethan hung up and found Lena standing in his doorway, wrapped in a robe, her face pale. I heard your phone. It's Ryan, isn't it? He broke into your old building. Police have him. She sat down heavily on his bed. He's escalating. Yeah, but he's also getting sloppy. This is good. It proves the pattern, gives us concrete evidence of criminal behavior. What if the police let him go? What if he makes bail and comes here? Then he'll get arrested again, breaking and entering, harassment, violating a judge's warning. David will have him buried in charges. But Lena was shaking, and Ethan sat beside her, pulling her close. I thought it was over, she whispered. I thought maybe the hearing scared him enough to stop. I know. I'm tired of being scared. I'm tired of him taking up space in my head, in our lives. I just want it to be done. It will be. This is the beginning of the end, I promise. They sat like that until dawn, neither sleeping, both listening for sounds that didn't come. When Ethan's phone rang again at 6 a.m., it was David. Ryan made bail 2 hours ago. Ethan closed his eyes. Of course he did. But here's the thing. Making bail doesn't mean he's free to do whatever he wants. The judge who set bail also issued an emergency protective order for Lena. He can't contact her, can't come within 500 feet of her, or any place he knows she frequents. If he violates it, he goes back to jail. No bail this time. How long does the order last? 2 weeks, pending a full hearing, but combined with the breaking and entering charges, we can push for something permanent. Do it. After hanging up, Ethan went to find Lena. She was in the sunroom despite the early hour, staring at a blank canvas. He made bail, she said before he could speak. I can see it on your face. Yeah, but there's a protective order now. He can't come near you. He wasn't supposed to break into my building either, but that didn't stop him. This is different. He's scared now. He knows he crossed a line. Lena turned to face him. You keep saying that he'll stop, that he's scared, that it's almost over. But what if you're wrong? What if he's not scared? What if he's just getting started? Ethan didn't have an answer for that. The answer came 3 days later in the form of Ryan standing outside the gates of Ethan's property at 7 in the morning, holding a sign that read, "Lena, I'm sorry." Marcus called immediately. "He's not technically on your property, so we can't remove him. Public sidewalk, freedom of speech, all that bullshit." Ethan looked out the window and saw him there, just beyond the gate, holding his pathetic sign like some kind of romantic gesture, instead of the violation it was. "Call the police. He's violating the protective order." "Already did. They're on their way." But before the police arrived, Maya came downstairs for breakfast and saw Ryan through the window. "Who's that man?" she asked. Ethan's stomach dropped. "Nobody important, Bug. Just someone who's confused." "Is he the one who was bothering Lena?" There was no point lying. Maya was too smart, too observant. "Yes. He looks sad." "He's not sad. He's trying to manipulate people into feeling sorry for him." Maya studied Ryan through the window with the serious consideration she gave all important matters. "He's not very good at it." Despite everything, Ethan almost smiled. "No, he's not." The police arrived 10 minutes later, and Ethan watched from the window as they talked to Ryan, examined the protective order, and finally put him in handcuffs. Ryan didn't fight, didn't argue. He just looked up at the house with an expression Ethan couldn't read, then let himself be led away. "Is it over now?" Maya asked. "I hope so, Bug." But hope and certainty were different things, and Ethan still felt the weight of uncertainty in his chest. The full hearing happened a week later, and this time they brought everything. The breaking and entering arrest, the violation of the protective order, testimony from all 3 ex-girlfriends, security footage, text records, everything David had been building for months. Ryan's lawyer tried to paint it as a man desperate to apologize, to make amends, to fix what he'd broken. But the evidence was overwhelming, and even she seemed to know they were fighting a losing battle. The judge, a different one this time, older, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen this pattern too many times, listened to everything. Then he looked at Ryan with something like pity. "Mr. Castellane, I've seen a lot of cases like yours. Men who can't accept rejection, who think persistence is romantic, who believe that if they just try hard enough they can change someone's mind." He shook his head. "But what you call persistence, the law calls harassment. What you call romantic gestures, the law calls violations of protective orders. And what you call love looks an awful lot like control." Ryan opened his mouth to protest, but the judge held up a hand. "I'm issuing a permanent restraining order. You are not to contact Miss Moore in any way. No calls, no texts, no emails, no social media contact, no third-party communication. You are not to go within 1,000 feet of her, Mr. Cole, his daughter, or any location you know them to frequent. You will attend court-mandated therapy for a minimum of 6 months, and if you violate any part of this order, you will be arrested and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Do you understand?" Ryan's voice was barely audible. "Yes, Your Honor." "Good, because I'm done being lenient with men who think stalking is courtship. This is your last warning, Mr. Castellane. Use it wisely." Outside the courthouse, Lena broke down. Not crying, she'd done enough of that, but laughing, almost hysterical with relief. "It's over," she said, clinging to Ethan. "It's actually over." "It's over," he confirmed, and felt the truth of it settle into his bones. The drive home was quiet, both of them processing what it meant to not be waiting for the other shoe to drop. When they pulled into the driveway, Maya was waiting on the front steps with a sign she'd made herself. "Welcome home, Lena," in crayon and glitter. "I thought you might need cheering up," Maya explained. "Dad said you had to go to court, and court is usually sad." "Not today, Bug," Ethan said. "Today court was good." "So the bad man is gone?" "Yeah, he's gone." Maya hugged Lena fiercely. "Good. You're part of our family now. We protect our family." That night, after Maya was in bed, Ethan and Lena sat on the back deck watching the stars emerge. It was the first time in months that the silence felt peaceful instead of ominous. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "What do you want to happen?" "I want to stop being the woman living in your house because she's running from something. I want to be the woman who lives here because she chooses to, because this is where she wants to be." Ethan turned to look at her. "Is it where you want to be?" "Yeah, it is. Even though we did everything backwards and too fast and completely insane, Even though I still don't really know what you do all day at that office, or why you have 6 bedrooms for 2 people. Even though your daughter is smarter than both of us combined, and definitely knows more about our relationship than we do. She smiled. This is where I want to be. The trial month is up. You could stay. Officially. Is that what you want? I want you to paint in that sunroom every morning. I want to watch you and Maya debate impossible physics. I want to fall asleep knowing you're 3 doors down and wake up to you stealing my coffee. Ethan took her hand. I want this to be real, Lena. Not fake dating, not temporary safety. Real. She kissed him, soft and sure, and it tasted like new beginnings. Then let's make it real. 6 months later, Ethan stood in the wings of Riverside Elementary's auditorium, watching his daughter perform in yet another bizarre school production, this time about vegetables learning democracy. Lena was beside him, her hand in his, both of them trying not to laugh at the earnest 9-year-old singing about the importance of voting. This is your life now, Lena whispered. Vegetable musicals and PTA meetings. Our life, he corrected. You're the one who volunteered to paint the sets. I was trying to be supportive. You painted a very detailed cabbage. It was disturbing. She elbowed him, and he kissed the top of her head, and Maya hit her big note about representation, and somewhere in the audience, someone's phone went off playing an embarrassingly loud ringtone. It was perfect. Perfectly imperfect, completely ordinary, the kind of mundane happiness that Ethan had thought died with Sarah. But it hadn't died. It had just been waiting. After the show, they went for ice cream despite it being a school night, because Maya's performance deserved celebration and because Ethan was learning that sometimes breaking the rules was exactly right. Can I ask you something? Maya said, chocolate ice cream on her nose. Always, Lena replied. Are you and Dad going to get married? Ethan nearly choked on his coffee. Maya. What? It's a reasonable question. You live together. You kiss all the time. You make googly eyes at breakfast. She looked between them with perfect 8-year-old logic. That's what people do before they get married. It's more complicated than that, Bug, Ethan said. Why? Because... He looked at Lena, who was biting her lip to keep from laughing. Because we want to make sure we're doing things right. You're doing things right. Things... I can tell. How can you tell? Because you're both happy, like really happy. The kind where you don't have to fake it. Maya took another bite of ice cream. Mom would like Lena. I think they'd be friends. The certainty in her voice made Ethan's throat tight. Yeah, Bug. I think they would too. That night after Maya was asleep, Ethan found Lena in their room, not the guest room anymore, but the master suite they'd been sharing for 3 months now. About what Maya said, he started. She's 8. She doesn't understand. What if she does understand? Ethan sat beside her on the bed. What if she sees something we're too scared to admit? Which is? That this is it for me. You're it. I don't want temporary or trial basis or seeing how it goes. I want permanent. I want real. I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life and argue about whether mushrooms can realistically sing and watch Maya grow up with you beside me. Lena was quiet for a long moment. That's a lot. I know. And if it's too much, if you need more time, I don't need more time. She turned to face him fully. I knew when you said yes to being my fake boyfriend. Some part of me knew even then that you were going to change everything. I just didn't realize how much I wanted everything to change. So what are we doing here? I think we're falling in love, real love, the complicated, messy, too fast kind that starts with lies and ends with truth. And I think Maya's right. We should probably make this official at some point. Is that a yes? Is that a proposal? Ethan laughed, pulled her close. Not yet. When I propose, it's going to be better than a conversation about our 8-year-old's matchmaking skills. I'm holding you to that. They fell asleep tangled together, and somewhere outside the city hummed with life, with possibility, with all the futures that hadn't been written yet. 3 months after that, Ethan took Lena back to Murray's coffee house. The same table by the window, the same order. Latte for her, black coffee for him. Dawn nodded in recognition but said nothing because Dawn understood that some moments didn't need commentary. This is where it started, Lena said, looking around. You standing outside, me panicking, both of us having no idea what we were getting into. Best worst decision I ever made, Ethan said. You stole my line. You can have it back. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, along with everything else I have. Lena's eyes went wide. Ethan, you said when I proposed, it should be better than a conversation about Maya's matchmaking. So here it is. The place where you asked a stranger to save you, and he said yes without knowing that saying yes would save him right back. He opened the box, revealing a ring Sarah would have loved. Simple, elegant, nothing flashy. Marry me. Not because it makes sense, or because it's the next logical step. Marry me because when I imagine the rest of my life, you're in every single moment of it. She was crying now, nodding before she could speak. Yes. Obviously yes. He slid the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for her all along. Dawn brought them champagne they didn't order, on the house, with a rare smile that suggested he'd been watching their story unfold from the beginning. That evening, they told Maya together. She took the news with characteristic composure, asked to see the ring, pronounced it pretty but not too fancy, and then asked the important question. Do I get to be in the wedding? Of course, Lena said. What would a wedding be without you? Can I wear a panda suit? Absolutely not, Ethan said. What about panda accessories? We'll negotiate. The wedding happened 6 months later, small and intimate, just family and close friends. Maya was the flower girl in a dress she'd chosen herself, white with subtle panda print that was visible only up close, a compromise they'd all agreed to. She took her job very seriously, walking down the aisle with perfect posture, scattering petals with mathematical precision. When Ethan saw Lena walking toward him in a dress the color of summer sky, her sister beside her, tears in her eyes, and a smile that could light the world, he understood what Sarah had meant about living bigger, about not wasting moments on fear or should-haves. This was living. This was choosing happiness even when it came from unexpected places, even when it started with lies and desperation and a stranger's kindness outside a coffee shop. The vows they wrote themselves. Ethan promised to always say yes when Lena needed him, to protect her but not smother her, to remember that strong people needed help too. Lena promised to keep painting in Sarah's sunroom, to love Maya as fiercely as she loved Ethan, to never again apologize for asking for what she needed. When they kissed as husband and wife, Maya cheered louder than anyone. 2 years after that, Lena's art show opened in a gallery downtown. Her paintings hung on white walls, each one a testament to survival, to transformation, to the journey from fear to freedom. The centerpiece was a portrait she'd painted from memory, Ethan standing outside Murray's coffee house, his face kind, his hand extended, in the moment before he changed everything. Ryan Castellane had moved to Boston, David's private investigator had reported. Remarried, apparently to someone who didn't know his history. Ethan hoped, for her sake, that therapy had worked, that Ryan had learned something. But mostly, he didn't think about Ryan at all anymore, because his life was full of other things. Maya's soccer games and Lena's exhibitions, and the foundation they'd started together to help domestic violence survivors. Morning coffee and evening walks and the 1,000 tiny moments that made up a life well lived. The night of the exhibition, after the speeches and the champagne and the collectors who wanted to buy pieces of Lena's soul, they came home to find Maya had stayed up past bedtime waiting for them. Did people like your paintings? She asked Lena. They loved them. Good. You're really talented. Dad's lucky he asked you to be his fake girlfriend. I asked him, remember? Same difference. The point is you found each other. Maya yawned, already half asleep. That's what matters. They tucked her in together, and Ethan marveled at how natural it had become, this partnership. How Lena knew exactly which stuffed panda Maya needed for sleep. How she remembered to leave the nightlight on, but not too bright. Later, in their own bed, Lena traced the lines of Ethan's face in the darkness. Thank you, she said. For what? For saying yes, that morning outside the coffee shop, for being crazy enough to help a stranger. Thank you for being brave enough to ask. I wasn't brave, I was desperate. Same thing, sometimes. She kissed him, slow and sweet, and Ethan thought about the path that had led them here, the lies that became truth, The fake relationship that became the realest thing in his life. The stranger who became his wife. 5 years ago, Sarah had died and taken his capacity for joy with her. Or so he'd thought. But joy wasn't something you got once and lost forever. It was something you chose again and again, in 1,000 small moments. In saying yes to desperate strangers, in letting your daughter teach you about love, in believing that second chances were possible, in understanding that sometimes the best things in life started with the worst circumstances, and the truest love began with the biggest lie. Outside, the city slept. Inside, a family breathed in unison, father, wife, daughter, imperfect and whole. And somewhere, in a coffee shop that opened before dawn, Dawn was already brewing the first pot, ready for whatever stories tomorrow would bring.